Raiders. They are a group of individuals that hunt shadow creatures, loot treasures, and protect people. It is a dangerous job, but these raiders are regarded as heroes. Their job inspires people and they are also a target of envy. It is also a universally known fact that a raider's heart beats the fastest when they are about to die. Sitting in a quiet restaurant, Jeong Wooman is dressed in a business suit with a cup of coffee in front of him. He is a job broker at the raider agency and hooks up people who aren't part of any guild with raider jobs. Sitting across him is Min Yi-hyun, who had received a call from Jeong Wooman earlier about a job. Yi-hyun was ecstatic to know that he had gotten his first job in a while. So, the two of them had decided to meet up at the restaurant to discuss the details of the job. As Wooman continues explaining, Yi-hyun is stunned to learn that he has been asked to be on the front line with a shield in a dungeon of undead monsters. He is appalled that he has pretty much been asked to become a meat shield. Wooman tells him that it's the only job available. Min Yi-hyun says that even kids that are lower ranked than him have no trouble finding good raider jobs. To this, Wooman replies by telling him that even if someone has a high rank, very few clients put in a request for warrior class raiders such as Min Yi-hyun. Yi-hyun then realizes the bitter truth that nowadays, magicians are the ones owning the scene. Warriors are comparatively slower than them and are also prone to a higher frequency of injuries, so they aren't the first choice for clients. As warriors stand in the front while magicians stand safely at the back while hunting monsters, warriors usually receive more injuries. Things were different 10 years ago, but now there is no longer a place for warrior class raiders. Min Yi-hyun is frustrated and thinks to himself that he should have picked magic back in middle school. 11 years ago, in middle school, Min Yi-hyun had gotten a good score on the Awakener aptitude test and therefore had the opportunity to go to Millie's Academy, which is an educational facility that specializes in training raiders. His magic aptitude score was 97% back then. Even Seona, who is the current top magician, only received an aptitude score of 92%. Contradictory to his magic aptitude score, he had scored only 34% in combat aptitude, but in the end, he ended up picking combat mainly because magic users had the worst reputation at that time. They were merely used as human buffing machines, as they couldn't even take down a low-rank monster without the help of a combatant. However, now, combat users are in decline while magicians are regarded as the best. Min Yi-hyun thinks to himself if his life would be better now if he had chosen to be a magician back in school. Normally, a raider's growth stops when they reach the age of 20, so there's no point in regretting things now. Wooman explains to Yi-hyun that such opportunities do not come along often, and that he was going to hand this chance to someone else, but then he remembered Yi-hyun's circumstances and decided to help him out. Yi-hyun then decides that he can't be picky about jobs in order to survive and agrees to take on the task. Wooman tells him he'll text the location and that he would see him there at 8 p.m. Yi-hyun asks him to focus on his agency work and not to meet him there. Wooman replies that he has some work to do there tomorrow. The next day, Min Yi-hyun is at the location with a bunch of other raiders. He wonders where Wooman is since he said he would meet him at the location. He wonders to himself why Wooman still works for the agency despite being a rank magician. As he's walking around in the cave, he sees a fellow warrior sitting by a tree and polishing his shield with a cloth. Suddenly, he gets up and screams Yi-hyun's name. Yi-hyun realizes that it's Manhwa, an old acquaintance. They both discuss about how these kind of jobs may be dangerous but pay well and how nobody respects warriors these days. Soon, everyone is asked to gather at the entrance, as they will be entering it in 30 minutes. When entering a dungeon, raiders have to be aware of two things. The first one is coming across an unexpected fortune. The fortune in dungeons can mess with the raider's mind and make them let their guard down, which can be dangerous. And while they're unable to think logically, the dungeon tests them. Then, Yi-hyun does something he does every time before going into a dungeon. He looks at a picture on his phone, a picture of him and his mother. He whispers to the picture that he will be back safely. They enter the dark cave and come face to face with the undead monsters. A magician yells at them to keep their shields straight and not to move. The warriors stand still at the front as the magician chant their spells at the back. And in no time, the monsters have been defeated by the magic. Yi-hyun realizes that he has nothing to worry about as these magicians are part of the Meteor Guild, which has been regarded as one of the best. The warriors take a break to drink water before they enter the boss room. Myung-ho asks Yi-hyun if he has received any good drops, as this dungeon is in a ranked dungeon where good items are dropped. Yi-hyun opens up his screen to check and sees a blurry and pixelated image. He then receives a message that the Aesir system has gone down and the connection with the user will be temporarily cut. He tries to reboot it, but that fails too. Then, Yihyun hears a voice telling him to follow the light. Another message states that an unknown presence is infiltrating the Aesir system. Suddenly, everything around him turns dark except for small specks of light around him. But no one else can see it, so he decides to check it out. He tells Myung-ho that he would be back in a moment and walks in the direction of the light. The wisps of light lead him down a deserted path. He receives more messages letting him know that he cannot access the status window. He wonders how this has happened, as he has been unawakened ever since he was 10 years old and the system has never gone down in those 17 years. He comes to an understanding that the voice he heard may be related to the system shut down, and that the Aesir system might be going through a big change. The Aesir system is actually a reference to the Asgardian gods such as Odin and Thor. It has been theorized that the name of the system originated from the Aesir. It was the final bastion of hope for mankind, after being driven to the brink of extinction. 20 years ago, in 2011, it was known as the Year of Calamity. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a giant tree of unknowable height grew. One morning, it suddenly sprouted, growing to cover the skies in just 9 days. Some people called it as a sign of human extinction, while others called it the Tree of Blessing. The real name of this tree is Yggdrasil, the world tree from the Asgardian mythology. On the 9th day, after the tree grew completely, tragedy began. All over the world, gigantic monsters broke out and half of mankind died because of these monsters. The other half died due to plague and famine. But then, a small hope for humankind was born. The first awakened. A human who wielded the authority of the gods appeared. And among them, there were those who hunted monsters. They were called raiders. The Aesir system is the strongest weapons wielded by the strongest heroes of mankind. But what would happen if something big were to change the entire Aesir system? As Yihyun continues following the light, he comes across a giant door. He thinks it might be a treasure gate. Treasure gates are hidden rooms that very rarely appear in high-level dungeons. These rooms usually contain special items or rare ingredients. It has been said that the items from a treasure gate can be sold for at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. He prays to God that there should be a class or higher gear inside the treasure gate. He opens the doors, and inside, the room is well lit and consists of tall pillars. In between the pillars stands a pedestal with an object on it. Yihyun knows that it is the special item. As he gets closer to it, his system seems to be partially recovered, and it notifies him that a new item has been acquired. Yihyun is happy that things are going the right way. As he picks up the item, he sees that it's called Odin's Lost Eye. His system states that when it is equipped, it can allow the user to understand runes and use magic to disarm or destroy. And most importantly, it is the only mythic item in the world. Yihyun continues to read about the skill it provides, a skill called universal derivation, which enables one to understand a magic formula and then destroy it. He also reads about its effects, which are learning of the universal derivation skill, usage of powerful magic without incanting, and blank cards which can be consumed to copy another person's skills. Yihyun thinks about the previous auctions where the highest rank item was S rank and it sold for millions of dollars. So, this mythic rank item that he has just obtained must definitely be more valuable. Mainly because it's the only one in the world. By selling this, he won't need to struggle anymore, and he won't be looked down upon by magic guilds and used as a meat shield. He looks at the item in his hand and decides that he should at least try it on before selling it, because coming across a unique, mythic rank item won't ever happen again. Just as he is about to do it, the system provides a warning that Odin's Eye becomes bound to the user when it is equipped. Yihyun is mortified and cancels it right away. He heaves a sigh of relief as he almost wasted a mythic rank item that was hard to obtain. He decides not to continue raiding dungeons and just sell the item in the black market because he's over 20 years old, and so his level cannot increase anymore. Suddenly, his system is down again. He walks back to where he was waiting with Myung-ho and apologizes for being late. Yihyun thinks that telling people about the mythic item he just obtained would be equivalent to asking to be killed, so he decides to keep quiet about it, and as soon as the dungeon raid is over, he would go and sell it. His best tactic at the moment would be to avoid any suspicion from others. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's explosions and Yihyun falls down and sees that the air around him has turned into a purple-colored mist. He notices other people coughing and gasping and presumes that it is poison mist. Placing his arm over his nose and mouth, he stumbles around and sees Myung-ho. AMD tells him that the mist is dangerous. The next moment, a sword pierces through Myung-ho's back and he falls down to his death. Yihyun decides to run out of there as soon as possible, as all these are actions of dungeon contract killers and not dungeon monsters. As he brainstorms on what to do and how to get out of there safely, he sees the shadow of a man walking towards him. He sends a fiery, electric bolts towards him and Yihyun manages to dodge it in time. As soon as the person approaches closer to him, Yihyun is shocked to see that it is none other than Wooman, the job broker at the Raider agency. Wooman confesses to Yihyun that he is the one behind the poison mist and the attack of the Meteor Guild. When Yihyun asks him why he did so, he responds by saying it was a request from his client and also because there are a lot of people who dislike the Meteor Guild. Yihyun is in disbelief that Wooman is actually a dungeon assassin. Dungeon assassin is the name given to those who misuse closed dungeons and commit murder inside it. In his mind, Yihyun debates whether he should take him on or not. Wooman is an A-rank magician while he is just a D-rank warrior. He wants to take revenge for those who fought in the dungeon with him and especially Manhwa. But he decides that it's better to not come in between Wooman's fight with the Meteor Guild and stay quiet. Yihyun is still contemplating his decision when suddenly, Wooman sends a fire blast towards him. Yihyun blocks it in the nick of time. Wooman then reveals that aside from the Meteor Guild, Yihyun is also one of the targets. Yihyun ponders why someone would target him and who would want him dead. His mind rings with voices and images of his father calling him a useless bastard, and he is quick to realize that his own father is the one who wants him dead. Wooman calls him he's smart for figuring it out. Then, Yihyun asks him if he was commissioned by the same person 5 years ago as well. The reply is yes, and Yihyun learns that his father had also ordered to kill his own wife, which is Yihyun's mother. As soon as he reveals this information, with one single move, Wooman uses his fire abilities to kill Yihyun. Wooman thinks he has killed him, but just then, he sees the lost Eye of Odin appear out of nowhere. It disappears, in its place stands Yihyun. Wooman senses that something is off and wants to kill Yihyun immediately. But his powers aren't working as Yihyun has equipped the mythic item and devoured Wooman's powers using a blank card. As a result of equipping the eye, one of Yihyun's eyes turns into a fiery gold color. Yihyun uses Wooman's own magical powers against him. He even uses a lightning chain spell, which is a high-rank spell. In the aftermath of the fight, both Wooman and Yihyun are on the ground, unable to get up. Yihyun ruminates over the fact that he just received the mythic item and it's already led him to his death. His system has a message for him telling him that a new operating system has been downloaded. If he chooses to run it, time will be regressed to the period the user most desires. Yihyun decides to run it as he has no other choice at the moment. The system informs him that from now on, he is the adversary of the high and mighty Aesir, and that he has received 2 new skills. Yihyun shoots up from his bed in confusion. He finds himself in his old house and is sure that it's nothing but a dream. The system reminds him that he has successfully reverted back in time to his most desired period. When he sees his mother, he goes up to her to give her a hug and wishes that he never wakes up from this dream. Yihyun has reverted back in time to November 15, 2020. He receives a quest which requires him to rest and recover his health, for which he would receive a blank card as a reward. The operating system has been changed to Nornir system. He knows he's been given another chance at life. Yihyun sees this as an opportunity to turn his life around. He reaches for the calendar on his desk. Written on it are the words "Write the application for Millie's Academy. Please be a combat class no matter what." He scratches the last line out and decides that he is going to be a magician in this life. Later, Yihyun and his mother are eating at the dining table while he sheds happy tears. His mother doesn't understand why he's reacting this way. He tells her about his plans of changing his application to magician class. At first, she is surprised to hear this from him as being a warrior is all he has ever talked about, but then, she agrees to support him no matter what he chooses to do. Yihyun has successfully completed his mission of resting, so he receives his reward. His level has returned to what it was 11 years ago, and his stats have also been reset. He takes a look at both his passive and active skills. Then, he decides to learn new skills to better himself. He's happy that he still owns the lightning chain skill, but tells himself that what he needs most is a healing spell. The year is now 2020. Magician class are treated like garbage when compared to warrior classes. However, raiders with healing skills are exceptions. They are treated like royalty no matter where they are, because even without being a raider, they can work in the medical field. So, Yihyun wants to learn the healing skill so nobody would look down on him anywhere he went. The only issue is that meeting an awakened with a healing skill is not that easy. Yihyun's phone buzzes. He takes a look and it's a message from Kim Yoo-jung, his childhood best friend. They both dreamed of attending Millie's Academy together. His mind flashes back to how she had died in his arms. He winces as he thinks about what happened, but then convinces himself that he has a chance to change things now. He reads the message. Yoo-jung has asked him to come with her to see Saintess Yoo Seung-yoon, who is giving a lecture downtown. Lee-hyun remembers the saintess and the magic that represents her, which is sacrifice, and immediately texts Yoo-jung and agrees to join her for the lecture. Saintess Seung-yoon is traveling in her limo to the lecture. Her manager, Sung-yi, tells her that her busy and hectic schedule is taking a toll on her and she should slow down. He wishes that there was at least one more person with a healing spell on the level of sacrifice, as that could help to heal her, because if she kept going on, she might collapse soon. A few minutes later, both Yoo-jung and Lee-hyun meet up and they sit down to watch the lecture. Yeon was guildmaster. Saintess Yoo Seung-yoon was a top-rated healer who was well known not just in the country, but the entire world. During a time when working as a raider wasn't commonplace, she was the only person who tried to protect the citizens before any other. Lee-hyun hopes he can learn from Seung-yoon, as it would be extremely useful in the future. Yoo Seung-yoon is giving her speech about encouraging more people to become raiders, while Lee-hyun thinks how 2 months from now, Yoo Seung-yoon will fall into a critical condition during the Itaewon dungeon raid because of her sacrifice healing spell. Seung-yoon continues with her lecture. She talks about how the current world is in an unprecedented period of disaster. Yggdrasil. She also mentions how after the appearance of monsters, countless people have lost their lives, but with the appearance of the awakened and raiders a few years ago, the situation has gotten a little better. But amongst the current awakened, only 20% are volunteering as raiders. So she insists more people to join as raiders and be courageous, as courage is what will change the world. When her lecture is over, Kim Yoo-jung is really inspired and can't stop talking about how Seung-yoon has more than enough qualifications to be her role model. Lee-hyun says that Seung-yoon wouldn't like to have such qualifications and informs Yoo-jung that he has other work to attend to. Before he leaves, he tells Yoo-jung that he changed his career path to magic and asks her to teach him magic theory. Before she can respond, Lee-hyun leaves and Yoo-jung is upset as she feels abandoned by him. Lee-hyun goes up to Sung-yi, Seung-yoon's manager. At first, Sung-yi assumes that he's just another fan and tells him that it's not a good time to give her gifts. But Lee-hyun states the real reason he came to see him. He tells him that he knows that Seung-yoon is sick, but he also knows how to cure her. Sung-yi angrily asks him where he heard about this while grabbing Lee-hyun's collar. Seung-yoon overhears this from her car and asks Lee-hyun if he can take responsibility for those words he just mentioned. He replies that he can definitely heal her illness. Seung-yoon would be able to tell immediately if he was lying, but Lee-hyun seems confident. She also has 2 hours to spare before her next event, so she suggests to Lee-hyun that they both go somewhere quiet to talk. She leads him to her office and they both sit down to talk. She asks him questions one by one, starting with how he found out about her illness. Lee-hyun tells her that he can't answer it and apologizes for it. He also says that if she really wants to hear it, he would tell her, but he would not heal her after that. When asked how he would heal her, Lee-hyun says that he plans on copying her skill. Sung-yi gets extremely angry and shouts at Lee-hyun that he doesn't know what he's talking about, as it is the guildmaster's unique skill. Unique skills are skills that stand at a higher rank than the pinnacle of skills, which are S-ranked skills. Unique skills such as sacrifice can only be obtained through either hereditary succession or by a unique individual. The formulae for unique skills does not exist. Because of that, unique skills are monopolized by an individual or a family. Lee-hyun tells Sung-yi to calm down and assures him that he wouldn't even have come to them if he didn't believe that he could do it. The underlying principle of Seung-yoon's skill, as the name suggests, is sacrifice, an offering to the gods, and because of that, Yoo Seung-yoon was restricted from healing herself. The only way to heal injuries caused by one's own skill is by using a skill of the same or higher rank. Lee-hyun convinces them that copying her skill would be the best method, as a higher skill than sacrifice does not exist. Seung-yoon agrees to Lee-hyun's plan, and without their knowledge, he uses his blank card to acquire her sacrifice skill. Lee-hyun then shows them that he is able to activate the sacrifice skill. Now that Seung-yoon believes that he has the ability and capability to heal her, Lee-hyun says that they will now begin the negotiations. In return for his favor of healing Seung-yoon, Lee-hyun wants her as his sponsor, as he has big dreams, which cannot be fulfilled without money and connections. Seung-yoon agrees to his terms by saying that he is talented and worth the investment, but only on one condition. The condition is that Lee-hyun must join her guild because of 3 reasons. The first being the fact that he figured out that she was ill all by himself, so his investigative ability must be high. The second reason is that he copied her skills perfectly. And thirdly, the most important point, was that even though Seung-yoon was right in front of him, Lee-hyun showed no nervousness. Lee-hyun thinks that it could work to his advantage, as being part of a guild will enable him to learn more and be successful. But it is illegal to make a contract between a guild and a student who isn't an adult yet. So Seung-yoon offers him a priority negotiation rights contract. a contract where the guild would support the student who isn't an adult yet, but when they become one, the guild would have priority over other guilds in signing a contract with them. Yi-hyun sees it as a great opportunity but decides to make a decision later. Seung-yoon tells him she'd send the contract to his house, and Yi-hyun begins to heal her using the sacrifice skill. Sung-yi is amazed that it's working and apologizes to Yi-hyun for what he'd said before. When the healing process is complete, Seung-yoon cannot feel any of the symptoms anymore. She asks Yi-hyun if he received the penalty for using the skill on her to heal. Yi-hyun replies that he'll be fine, as a skill copied using a blank card will disable all penalties. The next day, Sung-yi takes Yi-hyun, on his request, to a low-rank dungeon that belongs to the Manhwa guild, so he can raid it and hence level up. He is provided with spare items and tools for raiding the E-rank dungeon. He is also given a warp stone, using which he can return to the entrance if he finds himself in danger. Sung-yi gives him the stone as a token of his apology. Park Hana, assistant to Seung-yoon, hands her Yi-hyun's profile. Seung-yoon is surprised to see that he is actually a warrior class applicant with an excellent score in magic. She is stunned and asks Sung-yi to ask Yi-hyun to meet her as soon as he comes out of the dungeon. Meanwhile, Yi-hyun is in the land of the dead monsters. A monster shoots arrows with paralytic poison towards him, but Yi-hyun defeats it by activating the sacrifice skill. Yoo-jung is in her bedroom wondering why Yi-hyun is acting different. She is especially mad at him for leaving her behind after the lecture. She doesn't understand why someone who dislikes places with lots of people immediately agreed to meet her there. And worst of all, he randomly decided to change his career path to magician out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Yi-hyun is still in the dungeon battling 4 wraiths. Even though sacrifice is only a healing skill, when fighting against the undead, it turns into a powerful wide area skill called Light's Judgment. During the fight, the staff provided by the Manhwa guild cracks and breaks into 2, so he uses the sacrifice skill as an attack skill. When he's managed to defeat them all, he earns plenty of experience points. Yi-hyun perceives that just because he has copied the skill onto a blank card, it doesn't mean that he has mastered it. He is determined to gain more experience in order to use the skill more efficiently. Suddenly, Yi-hyun is unable to breathe. He sees that the dungeon boss, Nightshade, has appeared. The system warns him that he will not be able to fight against Nightshade as his level is no match for the boss, and he should leave the dungeon quickly. As Yi-hyun is about to use the warp stone, it slips from his hand and falls to the floor. His HP is decreasing and he is unable to dodge Nightshade. In an unexpected turn of events, Nightshade's movements come to a stop. Hel, the goddess of death, who rules over Helheim, appears and calls Yi-hyun as the child who carries the fate of the adversary. Hel says that Yi-hyun is the one who is going to go up against Aesir, but he is just a mere child with a normal physique and mediocre magic skills. She continues to tell him that Ragnarok is coming soon and he has become stronger quickly. She finally says that if he is unable to do so and return to that hell, she would kill him herself. She poses him with a quest to defeat Nightshade, with the terms that if Yi-hyun doesn't beat the boss in 2 months and prove that he is strong, powerful, and worthy, she would kill him. Everything goes dark and Yi-hyun wakes up at the entrance of the dungeon. His wounds seem to have disappeared as if they were never there in the first place. He thinks that Hel must have healed him. Yi-hyun is now motivated to become stronger and never stop, because otherwise, Hel would kill him. He realizes that if he has to be a good magician and beat Nightshade, he needs to start by learning the basics of magic. The next day, Yi-hyun goes to meet Guildmaster Seung-yoon as she had requested to meet him, regarding his awakened profile. When they meet, he tells her that the guild contract is favorable, but he has one condition, which is to teach him the basics of casting spells. But Seung-yoon has a condition of her own. Before she becomes his teacher, she wants to test his talent and skills. She asks him to show her his talent by overcoming a mana cube. A mana cube was normally used by magicians who are at least B rank, who wanted a better understanding of their mana sensitivity. Since Yi-hyun is still not used to being a magician, this could be a demanding test for him. Yi-hyun knows it's going to be a difficult task, but he is soon assured by Seung-yoon that even if he failed in this task, there won't be a problem with the priority negotiation rights contract. Sung-yi sets up the mana cube and Yi-hyun enters it. It feels like a deep ocean with mana, but he has no problems with breathing. Mana is similar to oxygen in this world. It is necessary for casting spells or activating skills, but being exposed to very concentrated mana for a long period of time could be dangerous. Among the many whirlpools, there's only one exit in the mana cube. In the dizzyingly tangled wavelengths, Yi-hyun attempts to feel the wavelengths of the mana to find the path connected to the outside. Just then, he sees a crystal and it seems overwhelmingly powerful, as if it contains this whole ocean of mana. Outside the mana cube, Seung-yoon and Sung-yi discuss about how long they think Yi-hyun will take. Seung-yoon says that she was the fastest in the country and she took 40 minutes. Sung-yi says that it will be one of two cases. Yi-hyun either won't be able to overcome the cube or he will set a new record. Suddenly, they see a crack in the mana cube. They are both shocked to see that it's only been 10 minutes. Sung-yi and Seung-yoon are both wondering what the hell is happening in there. Inside the mana cube, Yi-hyun is trying to figure out ways to get to the outside. He feels that the mana from the crystal is much denser than its surroundings. He realizes that it is the core maintaining the mana cube, so if he manages to break it, he would be able to get out of there without having to look for an exit. He grabs it in his palm and crushes it and makes it out in a record-breaking time of 10 minutes. He also manages to acquire a skill called Essence of Mana Application. Seeing this, Seung-yoon and Sung-yi are too stunned to speak. Usually, only 7% of magicians can break out of a mana cube, and even they would take at least 3 hours on average. B ranks take 2 hours. A ranks take about an hour and a half. S ranks take anywhere between an hour and 30 minutes. But Yi-hyun has even beaten Camilla from the European Union. Camilla holds the record for making out of a mana cube the fastest. She was a genius magician who made the Guinness Book of Records with a record of 36 minutes. But Yi-hyun has just broken her record with a difference of 26 minutes. Sung-yi congratulates Yi-hyun on his amazing job. Seung-yoon asks Yi-hyun how he made it out in just 10 minutes. He replies that he crushed the crystal. Seung-yoon is taken aback because an ordinary awakened would not even be able to find it, let alone crush it. So the fact that Yi-hyun was able to do so means that Yi-hyun's power exceeds the mana in the cube, and Seung-yoon is impressed. So she swears to him that she would make him the greatest magician in the world. Outside Yi-hyun's home, his mother and Yoo-jung are waiting for him as he's late and is not answering his phone either. Then they see a fancy car pull up. Then Yi-hyun get out of it and both his mom and Yoo-jung are surprised at the sight. In Yi-hyun's room, Yoo-jung sits on his bed giving him an angry look. She is angry with him as he has been acting strange for the past couple of days. She cannot seem to comprehend why he would choose magic, out of nowhere, despite wanting to be a warrior all these years. She asks him if he has gone insane. Yoo-jung reminds him how magicians don't make enough money, which is one of the main reasons Yi-hyun had initially decided to choose warrior class. But then, Yi-hyun remembers what Woo-jin had told him about how warriors are slow at taking care of things, so they are never the client's first choice. Yi-hyun doesn't want to talk about it anymore, so he asks her what she's doing here in his house. Yoo-jung lets him know that his mom told her to sleep over at his house as her parents have gone abroad. Kim Yoo-jung is actually the only daughter of an affluent family. Her parents dismantle monster corpses and sell the parts to different countries, so they often travel to foreign countries and she stays over at his house as their parents are friends. Yi-hyun then requests her to teach him magic theory basics as he has very little knowledge of it. She asks for something in return for teaching him, and after thinking about what she wants for a while, she asks Yi-hyun to grant her one wish in return for her favor of teaching him magic theory. Yi-hyun agrees but gives her wish an expiry date of 1 year, hoping that she would forget it by then. After a little disagreement, Kim Yoo-jung agrees to this. Because of her serious expression, Yi-hyun asks her what her wish is that she's being so serious for. He also playfully tells her that she couldn't look uglier. Out of anger, Yoo-jung grabs the pillow and hits Yi-hyun for teasing her. In a dungeon, surrounded by crows, Min Seong-oh is battling monsters. A man comes up to him and thanks him for helping him with the dungeon raid. Min Seong-oh thanks him for the compliment, and then the man goes on to tell him that he would be honored to have him as part of his guild, the Scarlet Guild. Seong-oh replies that he's not planning to join a guild anytime soon. He tries to convince Seong-oh by saying that Scarlet Guild would provide him with the best treatment. Min Seong-oh thinks that it was a vulgar sense of greed. But what would one expect from a human? But humans aren't the only ones like that, are they? By the time Seong-oh leaves the place, the man is confused as to why he was there at the place. Back in Seung-yoon's office, Yi-hyun is present for his first lesson. But Seung-yoon demands to see how good his battle sense and reflexes are before they begin the first lesson. She tells him they're going to have a spar. Yi-hyun voices that it's a bit too much for the first lesson. Seung-yoon replies that it won't be an issue for someone who made it out of a mana cube in 10 minutes, and so she asks him to attack her. Yi-hyun takes his stance, placing his left foot forward, bending his knees slightly. Yi-hyun lowers his shoulders as much as possible, a posture typically used by warriors that would allow him to easily dodge and move. He leans forward to throw a punch but is immediately blocked by Seung-yoon's hand. Yi-hyun is surprised that he hasn't been able to even get one hit in. despite Seung-yoon being a healer. She disapproves of his tactic and says that he still has not discarded his warrior habits, and magicians should not recklessly dash forward like that. She continues to teach him how magicians always weaken their opponents from a distance before landing the final blow. If he fights by closing the distance between him and the opponent too much, as a magician who already has a low defense, he would fall. She knows he has more potential, so she asks him to try again. But this time, she would fight back too. She makes him understand that he would have to see her fight as well in order for him to fully learn the concept of how a magician battles. And even if she somehow manages to hurt him, she would heal him right back up. So, she attacks him, but Yi-hyun blocks it swiftly. When it's his turn, Yi-hyun activates lightning chain skill, but Seung-yoon is unfazed by it. Her next attack gets Yi-hyun, but he still manages to stand up, taking Seung-yoon by surprise. She says that even though she lowered the strength of the spell, she didn't expect him to get up. She then asks him if he would be able to endure another skill called Holy Arrow. As it's heading towards Yi-hyun, he uses Universal Derivation skill and destroys her spell. Seung-yoon cannot believe her eyes that an untrained kid is able to perform so well. She is in disbelief over how he can cast spells without incanting. To a magician, incantations are something that always accompanied casting spells as a rule. It was possible for high-level magicians to incant silently at the cost of lowering the strength of the spell, but Yi-hyun is still a beginner at magic, so Seung-yoon has no idea how he's able to do so. At this point of the fight, Yi-hyun doesn't have much mana left. He is frustrated that nothing seems to be working. Seung turns around and compliments Yi-hyun by telling him that he's full of surprises. But before he can even react, she attacks him and Yi-hyun flips and falls to the ground. Yi-hyun keeps thinking about how he didn't even see that last attack coming. So this must be the difference between an S-rank raider and him. Seung-yoon sees that because of his time as a warrior hopeful, Yi-hyun has gained close combat experience, ability to cast without delays, and unbelievable magic derivation speed. Seung-yoon is impressed by Yi-hyun and tells him that she had a certain thought while she was observing his fighting style. She says that everyone's thought about it at least one time, but nobody has achieved it so far. A fighting style that only he can learn. Seung-yoon then asks him to call her teacher from now and congratulates him on becoming her first apprentice. When Yi-hyun is back home, Yoo-jung is teaching him the basics of magic theory. Through drawings, she teaches him about the most important types of magic: battle magic, buff magic, and healing magic. The system alerts Yi-hyun that his understanding of derivations and magic efficiency has increased. Yi-hyun sees that the system always notifies him without fail. It's almost as if the system explicitly wants him to improve. As they're discussing more about how he switched path from warrior to magician, suddenly, Yi-hyun finds himself in the midst of another realm. It's dark and eerie. Seong-min-ho is also there, and Yi-hyun hears a strange voice asking him if he really chose this path on his own accord. Yi-hyun is back in his room and ponders if he was just imagining it. His mind drifts back to Hell and her quest, but he tells himself that he shouldn't lose focus, so he tries to think of something more productive, like the valuable pill that would help him overcome this wall. In the Yeonhwa Guild, Sung-yi and Seung-yoon discuss about the thing she wants to teach Yi-hyun. Sung-yi reasons with her that many raiders have tried but no one has succeeded so far. But Seung-yoon reminds Sung-yi that Yi-hyun is talented, and if another S-rank magician is to appear in the future, it would be him. Seung-yoon is the only magician in the world who became an S-rank raider. Even then, as a healer, her effectiveness in battle was a bit low. But Yi-hyun has now shown up like a comet, and he has the capabilities to shake up the whole magic world. Later on, Yi-hyun is concentrating on making a mana enhancement pill, which doesn't exist yet as it is still 2020. The mana pill, like the name suggests, is a pill that permanently increases the mana of the awakened who takes it. It was an item that all magicians coveted. Yi-hyun is trying hard to nail it, but even after using up 3 sets of ingredients, he still has not been able to succeed. As of 2020, the pill won't be invented for another 5 years, and Yi-hyun is the only one knows about the ingredients and the steps needed to make it. Before he returned to the past, the pill's recipe was freely shared by a world-class alchemist. When he published the recipe, he mentioned that he hopes that the pill would be of great use to raiders across the world. Yi-hyun concludes that working endlessly on the recipe will not work. Instead, it's better to go to Lee Yi-sung, the alchemist. Lee Yi-sung is currently a senior in the first year at Millie's Academy, so that's where Yi-hyun is heading to. When his mother comes home from work, she is horrified to see that the kitchen is an absolute mess. Everything's been thrown around, so she thinks that it might have been a burglary. But nothing has been stolen. She wonders if there's a burglar in the world who only messes up kitchens. Back when the Yggdrasil first appeared and monsters started pouring out, there were a few people who established themselves the quickest. One of them was Quick Blade Lee Yishin. When the first awakened vanished without a trace, Lee Yishin came to take his place as the first S-rank raider in Korea. His son is none other than Lee Yiseng, the alchemist, who Yihyun is about to meet. So, Yihyun is off to take a portal to Daegu. Daegu is currently abandoned due to the monster outbreak. It was a city where monsters poured from all corners and one had to be very careful when stepping in there. But there was one reason why people still went there: Millie's Academy. As Yihyun stands at the entrance of his old school, he reminisces about the time he spent there. It was a great part of his childhood, but it also brought back horrible memories. He walks around the academy's campus, trying to think of where Yiseng could be when he comes across a bully beating up a fellow student for being a stutterer. The student being bullied is about to fall, but Yihyun catches him. The student looks up, and when Yihyun sees his face, he quickly recognizes him as Lee Yiseng. The bully grabs Yihyun by the collar for interrupting his fight. Yihyun uses the tactics taught to him by Yujung and casts a spell on the bully, activating a beam of light that shoots like an arrow and breaks the bully's arm. The bully becomes furious as Yihyun has put his reputation to shame in front of the whole academy. The man lunges forward to attack him, but Yihyun wraps mana around him as a barrier, a move taught to him by Seung-yoon. This move enables any attack to bounce off the barrier around him. The bully lays on the ground, unable to move due to the injuries caused by Yihyun. Yihyun takes pity on him and pours a potion on his face to help him heal. Yiseng watches the potion being poured out of the bottle with wide eyes. Yihyun says that he doesn't know who made the potion, but it's quite effective. Yihyun leads Lee Yiseng to a quiet corner where no one is around to hear them. He then asks him to make a pill for him. Yiseng stammers to say that he does not know to make things like that. Yihyun convinces him that he is actually very good at alchemy. He pulls out the potion that he just used on the bully from his pocket and tells Yiseng that he knows that he is the one who made it and sold it in the black market. Yiseng cannot believe that someone has found out information about what he does at the black market. The black market is a transaction system that completely hides the user's identity. Everything from the item's sale, the product's price, and the recipient. Yiseng only did it to earn some money, and he knows that his father would kill him if he revealed to Yihyun that he is the one behind the potion. So he begs Yihyun to keep it a secret. Yihyun agrees and informs him that he is not here to threaten him. He just needs an excellent alchemist to help him make the elixirs he wants. Yiseng realizes Yihyun is not someone sent by his father and agrees to helping him. He takes Yihyun to his workroom, and Yihyun tells him all about the effects of the mana enhancement pill. Yiseng cannot believe that something like that is even possible, even though he was the one to eventually make it 5 years later. Yihyun somehow convinces him to make it. He even tells him he's talented and capable of making it, and even if he fails, it would be worth it. Yiseng tries to guess the ingredients based on Yihyun's description of the pill. As he's doing so, his aura seems to have changed and he's not stuttering anymore. The two of them agree to work together, and Yiseng is pleased that someone finally believes in him. Yiseng cannot stop thinking about the amount of trust Yihyun has placed on him. His words have affected him so deeply in his heart. All his life he had been compared to his talented siblings and never gained his father's approval. So he's happy that someone actually has faith in him and wants to do well to please Yihyun. It's been weeks since Hell gave Yihyun her quest, and now only 10 days remain for him to defeat the dungeon boss, Nightshade. He continues training with Seung-yoon and earns new skills and experience. He trains so hard by learning from her and fighting with her that the training hall floor is covered with cracks and scratches. When Yihyun feels like he has improved, he tells Seung-yoon that he wants to put all the skills he's learned to the test by raiding a dungeon. When Lee Yiseng has finished working on the mana pill, he brings it Yihyun. He immediately consumes it and his mana stat increases by 15. The effect is so unbelievable that it makes the bitter taste of the pill seem sweet. Alchemy is fundamentally a profound science. Even when creating the same item, its effects could vary drastically. Yihyun is aware that even if he had taken the recipe to a different alchemist and asked them to make the pill, they wouldn't have been able to give him an item that would increase his mana stat by 5, let alone 15. He thanks Yiseng for the pill and shows his gratitude for the hard work he's done. There's still 9 days left before his time to defeat Nightshade runs out, but Yihyun decides that he is now ready to face the boss-level monster. Hell tells Garmer that there will be a delightful guest coming today, with a few equipment items, such as Valkyrie's necklace, rings, and earring, that he needs. Yihyun stands at the entrance of the dungeon and prepares to face Nightshade. He is transported to the land of the dead, and the moment he's there, he can feel the aura of Nightshade. He thinks that if he defeats it, he can meet Hell again. He has many questions about the adversary, Loki and Nornir, to ask her. Yihyun then tries to remember the special skill that Seung-yoon taught him, the combat style of a battle mage. The significant thing about this technique is that it is a hybrid combat style that uses both magic and physical attacks, and no one has been able to master it yet. As he's remembering the technique, he fights off a wraith, a draugr, and a skeleton soldier. As Sung-yi stands outside the dungeon, a woman named Yeonju shows up in a car. She hasn't contacted him since they graduated college, but here she was now, pretending that she came all the way just to see him. She starts snooping around the area and asks him if he is managing the dungeon, as that is not one of his usual responsibilities. She then pulls up a picture of Seung-yoon and Min Yi-hyun and asks Sung-yi why Yi-hyun keeps visiting the Yeonhwa Guild. Sung-yi simply tells her that it is none of her concern and she goes away. Inside the dungeon, Yi-hyun faces Nightshade yet again but is determined that things will be different this time. First, he uses the lightning chain technique. It does not seem to have much effect on the boss monster. Suddenly, the system warns him that Nightshade has entered a berserk state, due to which its strength and dexterity have increased. Yi-hyun is also warned that if he does not remove the stigma within 10 minutes, sudden death would be his penalty. Yi-hyun is shocked as he has never heard of something like this in a dungeon. But then he realizes that hell is infiltrating the system. He yells at her to stop interfering. At this point, there's only 7 minutes left on the clock. Yi-hyun thinks smartly and activates Wind Boost skill to destroy the monster's eyesight. Then, he uses a Flash Bomb skill, which should have been enough to defeat him, but the monster still continues to run towards him. Finally, he uses Sacrifice skill by changing it into an attack skill, and then he activates Light's Judgment just as the time counts down to the final 10 seconds. Right on time, the stigma disappears and the dungeon boss, Nightshade, has been finally defeated. Hell is impressed with Yi-hyun's battle skills and performance and invites him to her temple. After permission to enter the temple has been granted, Yi-hyun walks in. Hell congratulates Yi-hyun for doing an excellent job at overcoming the trial she had given him. He demands to know from Hell why she gave him the Nornir system and made him go through a trial like this. She grins and says that he has to grow as the adversary. Ever since he was born, he was destined to be the adversary to Aesir. He would be the one who will kill the greatest god, Odin. She says that it is what she, Loki, and the rest of them expect from him. Hell continues to explain that the world is heading to its end and Odin wishes to have everything under his control. To stop this, the strength of the adversary is needed. Yi-hyun has more questions he wants to ask Hell, but before he gets the chance to ask her, he finds himself kicked out of the dungeon. As a gift for overcoming her trial, Hell has gifted him a new skill called Hell's Blessing. It's a skill which enables all inflictions on the user to be invalidated. Inside the temple, Hell is talking about Yi-hyun to Mimir. He asks Hell how she feels about him after meeting him in person. She says that she is impressed because he won even after the stigma she gave him. Mimir says that he is relieved that he is doing a good job. Hell asks if he has anything more to say to her. He says he has no idea what she's talking about and Hell accuses him of feigning ignorance. She tells him that she knew that the adversary's law of causation was distorted. Mimir claims that he has no intent of deceiving her. Hell then talks about Yi-hyun's left eye, which is without a doubt the one Odin sacrificed at the Well of Wisdom. She asks Mimir to reveal what secrets he and Loki are hiding. He asks her to forgive him as he won't be able to tell her because it's too early. According to the prophecy, there are hardships waiting for the adversary. He needs a guide who can lead him down the right path even in the face of an insurmountable wall. The next day, Yi-hyun is with Park Hana from the Lotus Guild. She says she has a present from the representative as he will be entering Millie's academy soon. She takes him shopping for a long list of expensive equipments and weapons that he would need. They talk casually, but when Yi-hyun mentions the conceal skill, she reveals to him that the only raider in Korea who has the conceal is her brother, Park Sung-yi. Yi-hyun cannot believe what she's saying as their vibes are too different. Then, his system says that it agrees with the user. All of a sudden, there is specks of light around him, similar to the one that led him to the treasure gate. He leaves Park Hana behind and goes after the light. Meanwhile, An Hoyin is training for the Millie's Academy entrance event by having a dueling match. His father congratulates him for defeating his opponent. Later in the shower, Hoyin is frustrated and angry because he is tired of this mechanical life, and this is not the raider he wanted to be. Back at the shop, Yi-hyun thinks that it might be a prank by the Nornir system. Hoyin is also at the mall with his father. He is angry that he is spending money uselessly for buying weapons instead of keeping it aside to use for his mother's hospital expenses. Hoyin hates how he has become a pathetic tool that always has to obey his father's commands. Suddenly, an announcement blares through the speakers that there's been a dungeon break near the mall and demons have appeared. The association have contacted raiders to take care of them, so the shoppers are asked to stay calm and follow orders. Staff and employees instruct and direct people safely to the exit, but Hoyin doesn't move. His father tells him to come with him and not get involved, as if he gets injured, he would be at a disadvantage in the mill's entrance event. But he doesn't listen and makes a decision to stay and fight until the raiders show up so he can defend innocent people who can't fight for themselves. He also sees it as a chance to prove his worth and independence as a raider. When he finally faces the demons, Hoyan is too scared to move. His fingers are unable to move in fear even though he wants them to. Just as a demon is about to attack him, Yihyun comes to his rescue and also recognizes him as On Hoyan. Yihyun then tells Hoyan that he needs to help him keep the demons away from where the people are. Hoyan is still shivering and Yihyun commands him to compose himself and wield his weapon in a stern voice. Immediately, his shivering stops and he is overcome with the will to rescue people. Yihyun instructs Hoyan to lure the goblins, and so he activates the Cry of Aggravation spell to lure the demons. Yihyun is impressed by his high-level skill and thinks that even though he has a weak nature, he has potential to be very useful. He helps Yihyun fight against the goblins. After they've managed to finish them off, a man named Park Jong-hoon from the National Raider Association's management headquarters shows up. The man says that he doesn't know what to tell the higher officials as 2 kids have defeated all the goblins by themselves. Yihyun tells Jong-hoon to tell them that it was the Raider Association that took care of all the demons because no one would believe 2 kids were the ones who killed the goblins anyway. Jong-hoon says he would reward them both for the raid, but Yihyun tells him to give his share to Hoyan. It is a smart move by Yihyun as he does not need money as long as he's being supported by the Lotus Guild. It's also best to not draw any attention to himself before he joins Mills, and it's also more beneficial to have On Hoyan be indebted to him. Yihyun's plan is to avoid being noticed by his father. Before his regression, Yihyun had no talent as a martial arts raider, so his father didn't care. But now that he changed his career path to magician, he could very well go to all lengths to try and stop him. Yihyun wants his revenge to be quiet and discreet. He wants to get stronger from a place his father cannot reach him, and then he would wait for the right moment to rip his throat out. Hoyan feels guilty for taking the reward all to himself because it was Yihyun who did all of the fighting in the dungeon. But he needs the money for his mother's hospital expenses. Yihyun convinces him that even though he may have felt like he did nothing, he still overcame his fear and helped to keep the goblins away from the public, and so he is deserving of the reward. It is the first day of school at Millie's Academy. Yihyun and Yujung see a pretty girl named Seona. She is a fellow student who is already expected to be one of the top-ranking raiders. Yihyun wants to bring her over to his side as it would be advantageous to him, but she seems to be very different from the others. The chairman of Millie's Academy, Yaen, welcomes the students. As soon as Yihyun lays eyes on him, his mind drifts back to the moment when Yujung was about to die. He is adamant that he won't let her die this time. Yaen tells everyone about the special event that takes place at the Millie's entrance ceremony. A game in which all students, both old and new, try to steal each other's name cards in an enclosed space. All of a sudden, a magical plane is created around the students and the student hunt game begins. Yujung has fallen down and Yihyun is helping her up when Seona appears behind him. He couldn't recognize her before, but now he knows who she is. She's the girl who scored a 92 in magic aptitude. Someone who will change the present-day impression of the magic class and will go on to become an S-rank raider after Seung-yoon. At the Millie's Academy Central Control Room, the head officials are watching the event and discussing who the most promising students this year are. They talk about all the students who have a score of above 90 in their aptitude exam, but ignore the profiles of students who have changed their career path recently, as they believe that such people do not take the academy seriously. The cadets who enroll at Millie's Academy are quite talented on average, but even amongst them, there are a few who are a cut above the rest. The other run-of-the-mill cadets become a stepping stone for the geniuses in the end. Sometimes, an awakened who meets an enemy who they cannot defeat or faces death can gain another chance by reawakening. A raider has to constantly prove his worth, and those who fail are simply unable to prove themselves. Yaen's job is to pick out excellent gems to offer to him. The freshman student hunt takes place in a man-made demi-plane created with magic. Within that space, it is possible to carry out things that would be impossible in reality, like controlling the flow of time or removing the restrictions of the spatial bounds. And in this space, 5% of cadets are failed every year. When all the students are in the ring, Yaen explains the rules to them. The event takes place for 3 days. Only C rank or below skills are allowed in the demi-plane, and for every name tag that a student steals, points are earned. Yihyun realizes that he hasn't mentioned anything about unique skills or stats, which must mean that he wants to filter out the weak ones and keep only the best of the best. Since they are going to be spending the next 3 days there, Yoojung and Yihyun are off to find shelter. Yoojung suggests that they ask Seoina to join them, as having another person on their side would increase their chances of being safe. Yihyun knows that it is a wise decision, but Seoina is a variable that he cannot control. In the future, Seoina loses her senses in anger and jeopardizes the lives of the people around her. So Yihyun simply tells Yoojung that they cannot trust Seoina yet. But by then, Yoojung has already run up Seoina and asked her to join their side. Before Seoina has a chance to reply, two seniors, Shin Junsang and Kwan Soil, appear to steal their name tags. They are both warriors, and Yihyun decides it's better to face them instead of running away, as they could catch up to them or worse, round up more seniors to help them. Kwan Soil has a unique skill that allows her to find any target she focuses on within 300 kilometers. Junsang throws a sword at Yihyun, but he dodges his attack and counterattacks him, and thus Junsang is eliminated. Yihyun sends a party invite to Yoojung, requesting her to join his side. After watching him defeat Junsang, Yoojung wonders if he has always been this strong. Kwan Soil knows that a 3-on-1 situation will not work in her favor, so she is keen on getting rid of at least one of them and then running away from there. Suddenly, she rushes forward when no one is expecting it. Yihyun observes that this is a wise strategy for her to create confusion with a rush attack and then make an opening and escape. Yoojung immediately takes on Kwan Soil using her staff. Even though Yoojung is not an ordinary student, Yihyun still thinks that he should volunteer to help her fight Soil. But before he can, Seoina is already helping her by using Holy Light of Ulfheim from a Radiant Holy Sword. That was Seoina's unique skill, Falchion of Ulfheim. With that, Kwan Soil is eventually eliminated too. Seoina shyly asks Yoojung if she interrupted her fight against Soil. Yoojung happily replies that she won all thanks to her. After that, Seoina asks if their invitation to join them is still valid and agrees to join their team, and the three of them head to find a shelter. At the Nightmare Forest, two seniors see footprints on the ground. They conclude that people have gone by this way to find a shelter. The seniors tell the others to stop searching for now and instead keep an eye around the place where they saw the footprints. These seniors are angry that 3 freshmen were able to eliminate 2 seniors, so they are eager to find them. Suddenly, they spot Yoojung behind them. All 5 of them chase her. She taunts them by saying that they are chasing her like their dogs after a bone, and that they should be embarrassed to chase her in such a big group. Earlier, while they were in the shelter, Yihyun had planned a strategy with Yoojung and Seoina. He explained to them that shelters may be a safe place, but they can't stay there for too long because they need to find food, and most importantly, they need to obtain points. All this is part of the strategy to hunt seniors. As Yoojung is still running from them, she comes across some mushrooms. She is notified that it's a class 1 mushroom that bestows a debuff. Yoojung is glad that she has managed to lure the seniors to the right spot and leaves the rest up to Yihyun. Way before the student hunt event, Yihyun had gone up to Yiseng and asked him how to deal with the paralysis spore mushrooms during the event. Yiseng tells him that the sap from the ash tree, which can be found in the nightmare forests, would help with that. But it's just for treatment and not a prevention from the effects of the mushroom. The seniors enter the border of the paralysis spore mushroom habitat. The seniors discuss amongst themselves that it might be dangerous and that they should turn back. But then, they decide that they should not give up after coming all the way here. The paralysis radius of the mushroom is 50 meters. When the spore explodes, everyone within that radius will be paralyzed for 2 hours. So one of the seniors stays back outside the paralysis zone to watch out for the rest of the group. They realize that Yihyun has used Yoojung as bait to trap them, so they're angry that they have been underestimated by a mere new student. When they manage to catch up to Yoojung and lunge forward towards her, she uses her staff to cause the mushroom to explode. Living beings within a radius of 50 meters will be paralyzed for 2 hours. Previously, Yihyun had already collected some ash tree sap beforehand along with Yoojung and Seoina. He told them that this is a game that favors the martial arts class, and with the rule of using only skills below C rank, it was a huge disadvantage to magicians since they are highly dependent on skills. Yoojung responds that at least Seoina has an inherent skill, but she just has some buff magic and some basic skills. Yihyun encourages her that they must use even those basic skills as best as they can. So he suggests her to use Change. Change is a skill that allows the user to switch locations with a chosen ally. Yihyun tells them both that he has a plan with which they can do something interesting with Change. Back inside the mushroom habitat, Yoojung has activated Change to switch places with Yihyun. He enters the habitat by stepping on the senior's face. The senior mocks Yihyun that he is stupid to enter where the paralysis spore mushrooms are. Then he says that he has set up his friend outside to face this kind of situation. To this, Yihyun replies that his friend is not gonna come for him as he has been killed by Sona, and all three of them receive points for their contribution. Yihyun is still with the senior. They are both within the radius of the mushroom and the senior becomes paralyzed, but he is shocked as to how Yihyun is still moving. Yihyun has activated the Hell's Blessing skill to protect himself against the effects of the mushroom and then eliminates the senior. There are 3 seniors still remaining, but he defeats them as well. Min Yihyun is at the top of the ranking chart, followed closely by Kim Yoojung and Sona. Yoojung drinks the ash tree sap and she feels better, and she and Sona head to the place they plan to meet Yihyun at. Sona mentions to Yoojung how Yihyun knows so much about magic. She states that she had never learnt that change could be used like this even in her books. Then, Yoojung tells her that he has only been learning magic for a while as he was aiming for martial arts class all these days. Then she wonders how he knew about the ash tree sap. Later, they meet up with Yihyun. Yoojung teases Yihyun that his plan wasn't too bad and says that he normally looks stupid, so this was very unlike him. As Yoojung and Yihyun argue and bicker playfully, Sona watches them from a distance and looks at Yihyun longingly and thinks that he is very handsome. Then, she quickly collects herself and tells herself that she should not be having such thoughts. Later that night, in the shelter, Yihyun is making a stamina recovery potion taught to him by Lee Yiseng. Sona comments about how Yihyun's performance at the mushroom habitat was impressive. She says that it's like he is not the same age as her and Yoojung. She also says that he seems very experienced, as if he were 10 years older than them. Yihyun is surprised as Sona has good intuition and even managed to get the time frame right. Yoojung then volunteers to cook food for them. Yihyun is against it as she had previously made cookies that were purple colored even though she didn't add any blueberry jam. Then he asks Sona if she is any good at cooking. Sona replies that she used to live with her grandma, so she cooked for her every day. Sona begins cooking and Yihyun can't help thinking how there isn't much public information about Sona's family. When she's done with the meal, they all eat and Yoojung thanks Sona for the tasty food by hugging her. Yihyun too compliments her by saying that he did not expect to eat such tasty food in a place like this. Sona feels happy because she hasn't felt this way in a long time. In the meantime, the Millie's Academy officials at the control room are talking about how the top 2 places are magicians. They wonder if it is actually a system error. Yeon cannot believe that a party of mere magicians are destroying their martial arts class seniors and leading the event. He asks instructor Kim Ji-yeon to replay the mushroom spore incident and watches it, wondering how a new student was able to have that level of judgment and boldness in that situation and beat martial arts class seniors despite being a magician class fresher. So they go through Min Yihyun's profile and they are stunned to find out that his magic aptitude score is 97%. Yeon is thrilled to see this. He laughs and says that it is very good. He wants to see for himself how good Yihyun is and decides to step in and create a fun picture. Sona and Kim Yoojung are discussing about their current score of 1,100,000 points. Yoojung asks as they really have to leave the shelter. Yihyun replies that they have to, as the current students are too afraid to come out to the Forest of Nightmares. Sona agrees with him and says that they have to go out if they want to obtain more points. Yoojung then asks Sona what the highest score record in a student hunt is. She says that it's 1,140,000 points. Yihyun makes an observation that Sona is curious and competitive. He decides to keep this in mind and they all get ready to leave the place. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they see and feel a force that feels a lot higher than C rank, despite skills above C rank not being allowed in the student hunt game. Yihyun's system sends him a warning that connection within the subspace is unstable, and the restrictions set on the contestants will be temporarily disabled. As Yihyun, Yoojung and Sona scramble to figure out what is happening, standing in front of them is On Hoyin. Yihyun calls out to him but he doesn't react or reply. They become cautious as Hoyin is acting strange as if he were possessed. A closer look at his eyes and it's evident to Yihyun that it is the work of Gu Yaoin. Yihyun knows this because, before he regressed, something similar to this had happened at the Millie's Academy Festival. The day should have been a fun one for the young students, but it turned out to be a traumatic event. The main cause of the event was Gu Yaoin's inherent skill, brainwashing. After all his crimes came to light and he was backed into a corner, Gu Yaoin committed a terrible crime to distract the world and disappeared. A lot of students lost their lives that day and Yaoin ran away. That day was also the day that Yoojung sacrificed herself to save Yihyun. As Yihyun is well aware of Yaoin's brainwashing powers, he knows that he has to bring Hoyin back to his senses first. But then, Yihyun receives a message from the system. It is a sub-quest that requires him to help the student nearby who has lost their mind due to a brainwashing spell. Ihyun's task is to undo the spell and rescue the student within a time limit of 2 hours. If he succeeded in doing so, he would be rewarded with a blank card. Yujung tells Ihyun that she would help him, but Ihyun tells her and Seoina that he would handle the situation and asks them to go as far away as they can. Yujung reminds Ihyun that Hoyin is a martial arts genius, but Ihyun assures her that he can handle him on his own. Earlier, Hoyin was thinking to himself how no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get to first place. He also thinks about how great Ihyun and his team are for securing the top spots, so he is determined to do better as he still has time left. His thoughts are interrupted by none other than Yaoin. He tells Hoyin that there's something he needs help with, a small favor. The next moment, his mind has been invaded by Yaoin. He wonders what he's doing and then suddenly realizes and uses martial arts polar extreme skill, which is a rank skill. Ihyun is surprised at how different he seems now in comparison to before. He seems more skilled now and Ihyun can barely tell that it's him. In terms of physical defense, Ihyun knows he's not as good, so he activates the active skill, but Hoyin deflects it. Hoyin reacted even before his eyes had caught up to Ihyun's movement. Ihyun thinks that his battle senses seem to be great. Ihyun is aware that he can just use absolute calculation to easily get rid of the brainwashing. But the issue is the person watching them. Yaoin. Ihyun knows that Yaoin is probably smiling his disgusting grin in excitement to see how he deals with a martial arts class raider. So, Ihyun doesn't want to win against his brainwashing power so easily. He wants to show the evil man what he's capable of. So, Ihyun uses Flash Bomb skill, which causes the vision from the control room to be blocked. It's now clear to Yaoin that Ihyun knows what's going on and how to make himself more valuable, which is why he blocked their vision. So, Yaoin asks an instructor, Kim Seok-gi, to bring Ihyun to him after the student hunt event is over. Back in the demiplane, Ihyun stands in front of Hoyin, puts his hand over his head and activates absolute calculation to get rid of his brainwashing. Hoyin is hurt and Ihyun apologizes to him that he couldn't help it because Hoyin charged at him. Hoyin cannot believe that he attacked Ihyun. Confused, he then asks why he would do such a thing. Ihyun explains to him that he was mentally manipulated. On hearing this, Hoyin remembers hearing a voice. Then he states that such magic is usually above a level, so how could that happen when there's a restriction on skills above C rank? Ihyun says that someone might have meddled with the system. When Hoyin asks who it could have been, Ihyun says that he doesn't know and then says that it must be someone in a high position of power. Because the sub-quest has been completed, Ihyun is rewarded with a blank card. Ihyun is about to leave from the place when Hoyin hands him his name tag as he feels that it's only fair because he lost to him. He also says that he will beat him at the Millie's Academy Festival and take the nameplate back. Ihyun feels proud that someone from martial arts class, which was something he had desired for a long time, has acknowledged him. Ihyun had been through a lot ever since he regressed, but this was a pleasant feeling to him. For the first time, he feels like he has progressed. The 72-hour event finally comes to an end and Ihyun has scored a total of 1,530,000 points, which is a record amount. They come back to the real world and Yujung is discussing her points with Ihyun and Seoina. The amount of points scored multiplied by 10 is the amount that would equate to real money. As Seoina and Yujung celebrate their wins, instructor Kim Seok-gi asks them to follow him to the chief director, Yaoin's office, as he wants to speak with them. At the chief director's office, the three students wait for Yaoin. Ihyun complains to Kim Seok-gi that Yaoin is not here yet, even though he was the one to call them to his office. Yujung and Seoina do not know why he's acting this way. As soon as Yaoin enters the room, Yujung and Seoina introduce themselves to him. But Ihyun stays quiet and says that he almost fell asleep waiting for Yaoin. Everyone else in the room is tense and thinks that he is insane for saying such things to the director. Yaoin says that he is ashamed for making them wait, and that he just needed time to prepare for this conversation. Ihyun casually replies that they are the ashamed ones as they didn't even have a chance to wash up after the 72-hour student hunt event. To this, Yaoin replies that he wasn't considerate enough. Ihyun knew that he would act like that as he still treasures talented students. Yaoin then says that he has nice offer to make up for it and congratulates all three of them for placing in the top 3 of the student hunt. Because of their achievement, Yaoin wants to give them a few rewards. The first is the provision of Millie's Academy dormitory suite rooms, completely free of charge, the privilege of priority use of all Millie's Academy facilities, and when a test taken in Millie's Academy is unsatisfactory, the three of them would have an opportunity to take the test again and change their scores. Yaoin then states that with these special rewards that he's offered them, they would need to enter a partnership contract with Millie's officially. Ihyun reads the terms of the contract. One of them mentions that while working as a raider for 5 years, 30% of the earnings have to go to the Millie's Academy. Hehyun tells Yeon that the contract is more of a rip-off than a reward. Because of this, all of them refuse to enter the partnership contract. Suddenly, Yeon's system senses someone invading his mind. But with the use of Hell's Blessing skill, Gu-yeon's manipulation is blocked off, leaving Yeon angry. Yeon also cleverly uses his blank card on the brainwashing skill and copies it for himself. Yeon, Seoina and Yoojung leave his office and talk about how the contract seemed unfair, and that it was a good idea to reject it. Seoina also says that even if they accepted the contract, they would be starting with privileges while other people would be starting at a different point. Even if it may take time, it is better to earn it by themselves. Yeon sees how righteous Seoina is being. Her personality now seems to be very different to the one he knew before he regressed. Seoina also mentions how when an issue occurred in the subspace, neither instructor Kim Seok-gi or director Gu-yeon said anything. She then asks Yeon if he knows anything about the chief director because he is usually calm for a new student, but when he met Yeon, he turns strangely hostile. Yeon replies that he does not know for sure and cautions them that nobody can be trusted, whether it is Kim Seok-gi or Gu-yeon. They head back to their respective dorms. Yeon can't help reminiscing his old bad memories in the room. He does not want to experience hell again and so decides to find a new place to live after classes the next day. The next morning, Yeon goes for a run to warm up and then gets ready for his first day of classes at Millie's Academy. The magic class students are welcomed by their teacher, Kim Ji-yeon. She is the instructor for Introduction to Adjusting to Mana. Even though Yeon remembers everything from before he regressed, he is unable to remember anything about this particular instructor. Then, he understands that she might be one of the instructors who quit pretty soon. The class is taking place in a facility instead of a classroom to test the students' mana sensitivity. Kim Ji-yeon leads them to the mana room and the students start to panic. Yeon notes that it seems similar to the mana cube he entered before in the Lotus Guild, but this one feels less dense. Unlike the mana cube used by guilds, this is a mana room. It is an improved and less dense version of the mana cube so that even the new students are able to withstand it. The mana room is further divided into several mana rooms. The first room's mana density is similar to the normal atmosphere, but as they progress through the rooms, the density gets higher and higher. New students usually only reach the 3rd level, whereas graduate students reach their limit by the 7th level. Kim Ji-yeon asks the students to follow her and leads them to the first room. Nobody seems to have any problems with it, so they move on to the second room. A few students who are unable to withstand it are escorted away to the exit by the assistant instructor. By the time they reach the 6th level, there are only 4 students left: Min Yi-hyun, Kim Yoojung, Seoina and Lee Soo-hak. They clear the 7th level as well and head up to the 8th. From this level onwards, the mana density changes every second as if it were a dungeon. Soon, Lee Soo-hyuk and Kim Yoojung also cannot handle it and are also out. Yi-hyun and Seoina are the only ones remaining now. They head to the 9th level and Seoina seems to be struggling, and the instructor wants to help her, but she is reminded of the instructions from director Gu-yeon and that no matter what situations the students find themselves in, the teachers must never offer them help first. Seoina, as she's struggling, thinks about how until now, everyone had said that we live in a world where only the strong can make it out alive. Even if she is talented at magic, she will always end up groveling at the feet of martial arts raiders. She has been told that there is no future for the weak. Seoina mutters that she lost this time too. She is also escorted out while Yi-hyun tries to make out what she means by those words. The instructor and Yi-hyun enter the 10th level and the teacher mentions how it gets hard for her to breathe too after this point. Yi-hyun says that it is getting hard for him as well and they leave together. The instructor can't help thinking that Yi-hyun does not even seem to struggling despite him saying that it's hard for him. After leaving the mana room, the teacher asks everyone to clap for Yi-hyun, as he has reached the 10th level, which is what a B-rank raider could reach, and so, he also has potential to be higher than that. She then says that she hopes all the students try to do their best to catch up to him. Lee Soo-hak seems angry at this while Seoina feels upset. Later, Yi-hyun thinks back to how Seoina acted in the mana room and what she said. He thought that she was just competitive at first, but this seemed different. He thinks that it might be compulsion. It is a relief she wasn't hurt this time, but it would be harder to control later if she stays the same way. But of course, Yi-hyun knows that he will not get involved in her life and control her. But since he's already made an impact in the lives of Seung-yoon, On Hoi-in and Lee Yi-seng, he feels that he might end up changing her future too. And the same goes for Kim Yoojung. Yi-hyun doesn't exactly know how his actions will impact their lives, but in order to always be one step ahead in rapidly changing situations, he would need to prepare. Lee Soo-hyuk wonders how Yi-hyun was able to get to level 10 with ease. He asks his friend, Kim Min-soo, to tell him all about Yi-hyun. Soo-hyuk thinks that Yi-hyun is either cheating or hiding something. His friend says that this is Millie's and cheating is not possible within the campus. Soo-hyuk emphasizes that there is no way someone could be stronger than him without cheating. Kim Min-soo tells him that he could never ever be stronger than Yi-hyun, and on hearing this, Soo-hyuk walks away. Later that evening, Yi-hyun is talking to Seung-yoon over a video call about the student hunt event. Seung-yoon wants to know from him how it went. Yi-hyun tells her that he won first place. Seung-yoon is glad to hear that and congratulates him. She tells him that he is off to a great start at Millie's, even though the academy was infamous for its difficulty. When Yi-hyun tells her that he was worried that he might not have won first place, Seung-yoon asks him if there were any other noteworthy students. He tells her about Yoo-jung, Hoyeon, Seo-in-na, and Lee Yi-sang. Seung-yoon knows that Lee Yi-sang is the son of Lee Yi-shun. Family is family, so it might create conflict with Lee Yi-shun's guild if the Lotus Guild tried to scout him. She then asks Yi-hyun if they should still scout him despite the risk. Yi-hyun says yes, as Yi-sang will become the best alchemist one day. Seung-yoon has to cut the call short when Representative Baek Ji-hyun SSI comes to meet her at her office. She is the curator's guildmaster. Without wasting any time, she says, referring to Min Yi-hyun, that she noticed a pretty boy that Seung-yoon has been fostering. Then, she asks Seung-yoon how much she wants for him. Yoon replies to Jaehyun by saying that she doesn't think of guild members as money. Jaehyun then asks her if Yi-hyun would think the same. To this, Seung-yoon says that there are some things money can't buy. Jaehyun replies that she didn't think Seung-yoon would take the offer anyway and says she was being polite by coming here to ask. Seung-yoon says what Jaehyun did was not polite but unpleasant. After this, Jaehyun says she's going to leave as it's getting late, and also because she knows Seung-yoon doesn't want to talk to her for too long. Seung-yoon replies that she's not dull after all. To that, Jaehyun says that's how a merchant should be, and leaves. The next day at Millie's, a physical capability test is conducted and An Hoyeon beats Yi-hyun by 2 points and comes in first place. Seeing this, Yi-hyun sighs, thinking that he's still not good enough to compete against a martial arts genius. He thinks that second place is not bad and there's no hurry to improve now, but he's not where he wants to be right now. He then notices Yoo-jung and Seo-in-na giving him weird looks. He goes up to them and Yoo-jung asks frustratedly how a magician class could take second place in a physical capability test. Yi-hyun tries to tell her that it's because he was warrior class at first. He then advises her that she just shouldn't focus only on magic and asks her if she hasn't heard of the saying that strength powers the nation. Upon hearing this, Yoo-jung turns angry and says she would beat his face one day. Watching this, instructor Kim Seok-gi also thinks to himself that Yi-hyun is a dangerous guy like Yeon had told him. He wonders how Yi-hyun is able to do it because that's not the kind of strength a magician class should have. Later, a second physical capability test called the R-Room Evasion Test takes place. Yi-hyun remembers this test from before his regression. It was a test for students to test the extent of their abilities and hit the wall of their limitations. Kim Seok explains how the test takes place. He says that this is where the advanced technology of Millie's is stored, called the R-Test Room. It's where the evasion test would take place. The R-Battle measurement system is in front of students, made to better their abilities in battles through virtual reality. Only the evasion skills of students would be tested, but higher points would be given for defeating monsters. Yi-hyun thinks this is true as raiders hunt monsters and discover equipments, potions, and artifacts. A raider who cannot fight is useless. The instructor then hands out earpieces to the students. Yoo-jung asks what it is and Yi-hyun explains that it's a receiver device which supports the battle system displaying virtual reality. Kim Seok comments that Yi-hyun is well informed and Yi-hyun agrees to his statement. The device displays virtual reality by stimulating the brain to make it feel as if the monsters displayed through the projector are real. The R-Battle system overlays 3D images into reality using projectors on drones, making the monsters look real. The point of the device is safety. As the monsters are fake, there's no risk of being hurt. But the simulation from the receiver recreates a fifth of the enemy's attack damage. This is just to plant a bit of anxiety in the students so they do well in actual dungeons. Kim Seok continues to explain that the R system has levels from 1 to 100, but today, they would only go up to level 10. The test would be done with groups of 4 and the instructor names the groups. Yi-hyun finds himself in a group with 2 magician class and 2 martial arts. Yi-hyun notes it's a nice balance. Lee Soo-hyuk asks Yi-hyun how he was able to win first place in the student hunt despite being a magician. Saying that there might be a special reason for that, he then asks Yi-hyun to teach him too. Yi-hyun asks him what if he doesn't have a special reason. Soo-hyuk says that he would find out even if he has to use force. Then Yi-hyun asks him why he didn't say that he wants to fight him from the start. Soo-hyuk replies that he's quick to catch on. Yi-hyun and Soo-hyuk's teammates worry that their team might not do well as both of them are already arguing despite being on the same team. She tries to soothe the situation by talking to them, but the group is immediately called to the field. The R evasion test begins and VR skeleton soldiers appear. Soo-hyuk decides to back away for now, but Yi-hyun runs towards the skeleton soldier. The girls try to warn him that it's dangerous, but he doesn't listen. Soo-hyuk asks what a magician is going to do by going into combat. Yi-hyun didn't think he'd still get these kind of provocations. Left with no choice, Yi-hyun decides to show him his abilities. Yi-hyun skillfully casts his powers and takes on the monster, killing it. Then, more monsters appear. Yi-hyun kicks them and activates Mono Weapon skill. The Mono Weapon is a special skill that regular magicians can't use. This skill increases physical damage, and despite being a skill for magicians, it's useless. However, for Yi-hyun it's different. Yi-hyun has now cleared the first level of the R evasion test. He's also been given reward points. The level 2 begins, and this time, Yi-hyun faces a Draugr. He says to the Draugr that it's been a long time, and eventually, Yi-hyun clears up to level 10 without any flaws. He is also congratulated for setting a record. Soo-hyuk is in disbelief at what he's seeing. Yi-hyun thinks to himself that his body feels lighter after changing his combat method to what Seung-yoon taught him. Yi-hyun feels satisfied but wonders why she's so excited whenever she's teaching him. It's kinda scary to Yi-hyun, but what she teaches him is great, so he doesn't mind. Soo-hyuk comes up to him and demands to know what he did. He asks if he really wants him to believe that a magician stepped up into combat and swept up all the enemies by himself. Soo-hyuk claims it's impossible unless Yi-hyun cheated. Saying that what he saw is all there is to it, Yi-hyun walks away. Soo-hyuk still doesn't believe him, so Yi-hyun asks him if he wants to check it for himself since he's so curious. They're both interrupted by the instructor, who asks them what the issue is. Soo-hyuk is angry that the instructor stopped him but tells Yi-hyun that he would fight him at the Millie's Academy festival. Yi-hyun tells him he has plans on that day. Later, Soo-hyuk is in bed, pondering why Yi-hyun thinks of him as a rival too. He thinks that this isn't the time to be reminiscing and gets up to go to the training center because he doesn't want to disappoint Yi-hyun. Later, Yeon asks the instructor for the physical capability test results. Instructor Kim Seok tells Yeon that Yi-hyun scored the highest. Yeon orders Kim Seok to continue to send reports on Yi-hyun's grades and what he does. He also tells him to let him know if Yi-hyun does anything strange. Yi-hyun has cleared level 27 of the R evasion test. In his current state, level 27 is his limit. At this limit, he could probably clear 6 degrees Celsius rank raiders with some difficulty. This means that Yi-hyun's current level is the same as his, so the next dungeon will probably be mock dungeon practice. He makes a note to practice in advance. Yi-hyun remembers the mock dungeon incident that happened before he regressed. It was an incident that cost many students' lives and was remembered as a tragedy. Yi-hyun's team was also caught in the middle of that tragic event, but in the end, he was the only one of the team to make it out alive. He was reprimanded and told he should have died instead, but he couldn't quit Millie's. He didn't want to disappoint those who believed in him. The following day at school, Yoo-jung and In are nervous about the mock dungeon practice happening the next day. He assures them that it's normal to feel that way for going to a dungeon for the first time. Yoo-jung asks him if it's not his first time either and if he goes for walks in dungeons. Yi-hyun says no, but he has seen monsters before, like the one standing beside him now. Yoo-jung hits him and then Yi-hyun gives them potions and asks them to take it if they're worried. He says he bought it when he was buying one for himself and asks them to not be stingy while using it. Yi-hyun thinks how he escaped last time by luck, but this time, he would do it with his own abilities. It's the day of the mock dungeon practice and Yi-hyun prepares beforehand by warming up, because no matter how good a magician one may be, if they suddenly use high-level magic, they might suffer from mana rebound. And if the magic rebounds, it can harm the user. If he could coalesce the magic power in his core beforehand, he could use it to strengthen his body or magic. Yi-hyun receives a quest stating that he has succeeded in returning to the point he most desires. So after several turning points, he must now choose to make the same decision or a different one. That choice could kill people or save them. He's given 11 hours to complete this quest. Yi-hyun thinks that this is weird, but the Nornir system's definitely hoping for him to get stronger. He wonders what their intention is. During the mock practice dungeon, the teacher Kim Ji-yeon assures the students that only low-level monsters that the students will be able to take on will show up. But Yi-hyun knows that it's all just Yeon's trap is mixed with those low-level demons or a few boss-level monsters. It wouldn't be difficult for Yi-hyun to take care of, but he doesn't intend to act how Yeon wants him to. However, in this practice, Yeon would reveal a small weakness. That weakness might be Yi-hyun's chance to kill him. Teams are made by drawing lots and Yi-hyun's group consists of Seo-in-a and 2 martial arts students, Kim Jina and Park Seong-woo. Yi-hyun is relieved that there's someone he can talk to comfortably, and he's also certain of her abilities, so it won't be a problem to make strategies. After a bit of team planning, the groups head to their designated dungeons. Yi-hyun suddenly has a vision where the 2 martial arts students try to take on the boss monster and ask Yi-hyun to run away. Yihan wonders what the system meant by asking him to make a choice. He realizes now that he's been given the choice. Yihan realizes how the Nornir system was after this from the start. He introduces himself and Seoina to his teammates, while saying that Ina is quiet around people, so he would talk on her behalf. Seongwoo says that they can all get to know each other better as they travel together. Gina comforts Seoina by telling her that they aren't shy, so she doesn't need to worry about it. Yihan notes how they're both the same as before he regressed. Then, they discuss strategies and decide that Yihan would be the leader. Yihan advises his team that they must not falter no matter what happens in the dungeon, especially the martial arts raider who stands in the front. If that person falters, the whole party would be wiped out. Seongwoo says that Yihan's planning is impeccable and it's as expected of a student hunt first place winner. Kim Yoojung is on Hoyen's team, so Yihan feels relieved knowing that Yoojung will be safe. Yoojung's team find themselves in a mine dungeon and they suddenly hear something approaching. They brace themselves and see some monsters surround them. Hoyen says that they might be weak, but it'd be tough to beat a group of them. Yoojung begins to incant and activates Flash Bomb skill, which weakens them. Then, an Air Blast skill is activated which finally kills the monsters. Everyone seems fine except one student. The group assumes he's been poisoned by the Koblad. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eyes, Yoojung spots a boss monster towering over them. They realize that it's not poison but an incredible amount of magic power. Hoyen is shocked that there's a Koblad lord here. Meanwhile, Yihan's group is in another dungeon, and Gina praises Yihan for killing all the monsters by himself. Yihan modestly says that it was nothing. Seoina thinks to herself that it wasn't nothing, but at this rate, they would be able to clear the dungeon without anyone getting hurt. Yihan asks Seoina if she still feels nervous around others. She agrees with him. Yihan thinks about how even before he regressed, he never saw her speak much. They enter another portion of the dungeon, but it seems different from what Yihan remembers, so he realizes that it must be Yaen's work. Yihan's existence has become a huge variable to Yaen. Yihan senses something and alerts the group. He tells them that this is nothing like they've faced before, so they should be careful. A Koblad lord appears before them and they're shocked to see a boss monster. They use magic armor and activate Provoke a Kill. The monster attacks Seongwoo, who calls out to Yihan for help. Yihan immediately unleashes his power on the monster, but the Koblad lord has regeneration abilities. Yihan says that this is too much. The system informs him that the perpetrator behind the Kobold lord is Odin's crows. Yihan also receives a quest to hunt down every single crow, for which he would receive a blank card as a reward, and if he wasn't able to do so, the penalty would be death. The instructor Kim Jeon watches what's happening in the dungeon and thinks how Yihan could be so good. She's an rank magician too, but she can't do what he can do. Suddenly, Yoojung comes running out with her team. They tell her a Koblad lord appeared in the dungeon. Kim Jeon is shocked and cannot believe what she's hearing. People come to the students' help immediately and say that it's just light mana poisoning. Yoojung worriedly asks the teacher if Yihan's group is back. The teacher says no. She calls up Yaen and informs him that there's a B-rank monster in the dungeon. She requests him to call for emergency support. Yaen tells her he would send a team, but Kim Jeon still feels anxious. Yihan now receives a message that says the being has been identified as Odin's raven. Odin uses two ravens, one named Hyujin and another named Munin, to collect all kinds of knowledge in the world to rule over Asgard, so Yihan realizes that it's Odin's followers doing. The mana he senses is at least B rank, and it regenerates too. Even though Yihan is strong, he knows it's not gonna be easy to take him on. He wonders if he should run away, but that's what he did in his past life like a coward, and his life was full of constant regrets. Yihan sees this as a new opportunity and vows to fight this time even if it's just a test. Yihan tells the others on his team to get out of the dungeon while he stops the beast. Seongwoo asks how he would be able to do it by himself. Yihan yells at him to shut up and run. He's about to take on the beast but sees Seoina by his side, ready to attack. She says that she can help him. Yihan thinks that those are the eyes of someone whose mind can't be changed, so he tells her to stay and help and asks Seongwoo and Gina to go tell the instructor about the situation. They hesitate, but Yihan pleads them, so they agree and leave. Ina takes on the monster and Yihan says he would cover her back. She uses a divine sword incantation to take him down. Yihan notices the monster's body is melting. There's a limit to how much mana a body can hold. Yihan realizes that there's someone controlling the beast, someone imbuing more mana than the beast's limits. So, Yihan equips the Mistletoe Lane item to widen his vision and obtains the skill Magic Power Detection. He sees the hand controlling the mana of the boss level monster and decides to tear him apart. Meanwhile, Hyujin tells Odin that he found Mistletoe Lane, which had disappeared from the god's storage. When asked where it is, he replies that it's in Midgard with the prophesied great enemy. A girl wonders about the great enemy and Thor says that she worries too much and asks if she has a treaty with resistant Aesirs. Thor is reminded that they lost Balder in the war and what killed him was Mistletoe. Odin then asks Hugin to go and find out if the great enemy has made contact with the half-Aesirs, and Hugin says yes. Seokgi meets up with Yain, who asks him how things are. Yain says no one seemed to notice anything yet. Yain chuckles and says that's good to hear. He thinks how he had fortunately borrowed his strength ahead of time, and no matter how arrogant he acted, Yain would soon fall into his hands. All of this was for Odin and Aesir. Meanwhile, Yain is still fighting the beast, who is still not backing down. He asks Inna to cover for him and says that he needs to be clear of its attacks. Inna replies that she would try. Yain thinks that Inna is probably already aware of Mana Rebound. Even if he did end up defeating the Coblod Lord, the chances of Inna not making it are high, and yet she still plans to help him. In this life, Yain had resolved to not trust anyone. After all, this world was completely unfair and cruel to the weak. But there's only one chance now, and Yain wants to put an end to this. He activates Mana Shield skill and takes on the Coblod Lord while thinking what his friend had told him once. He had said there's nothing more miserable than dying because you couldn't trust your own companions. From here on out, Yain vows to prove that he wasn't wrong. Inna is shocked that Yain is using it as a movement skill. She wonders how skilled one must be with mana control for that to be possible. Yain goes to kick the beast in the face, but it lifts up its sharp clawed leg to attack him. Yain dodges it and grabs his sword. He takes a swing at the beast and breaks the mana thread connecting the beast to Odin's raven. The Coblod Lord falls apart, and Yain goes up to see who's behind all of this. He sees a crow-like creature in a robe and wonders what the hell Odin's goal is. He also spots a necklace lying next to the creature and wonders what the connection between Yain and Odin is. Since the crow doesn't have a will of its own, Yain steps on it. Inna comes up to him and says that it's not over yet, as he should be careful of Mana Rebound. Yain receives a message saying that corrupted mana has entered their bodies. They both cough and struggle to breathe. Then, Yain is notified that due to the purity of the user's mana, the corrupted mana has been purged. Yain is glad it worked, and for hunting the crow, he receives a blank card as a reward. After he's fully recovered, Yain is given a message saying that his teammate's life is in grave danger. He sees Inna on the ground. The system then says that if she doesn't recover immediately, the designated party member will die. After getting up, Inna asks Yain what happened. He asks her how she feels, and Inna notices that her health and mana have fully recovered. She is confused as she's sure that she experienced Mana Rebound. So she tells Yain she's okay and apologizes for being asleep. She notices the Coblod Lord who's dead and asks why Yain didn't leave after defeating it. He says he was waiting for her to wake up. He then tells that he has something to say to her. She asks what it is, and Yain replies that they need to get their stories straight. However, outside the dungeon, Yujing asks Yain's teammates why only they both made it out. She goes to fight them but is stopped by the teacher, who tells her not to worry about her friends. Just then, both Yain and Inna walk out, and Yain asks if they're fighting because of them. The teacher is beyond shocked. The inspection team had told her they'd definitely be dead. Yujing runs up to them and hugs them. While crying, she says that the instructor told her they'd be dead. Yain asks her to let go. He sees Songwoo and Gina teary-eyed too. He thanks them for trusting him and Cona. He explains to the instructor that those two left because he asked them to, and so they shouldn't be blamed or insulted. Yujing still angrily asks them how they could leave their teammates behind. Yain says he would have done the same, remembering the past incident. Yain then tells her not to get mad for him. She angrily retorts that she was mad for Ine. Yain looks at the instructor, thinking if she's the one that healed him. Inside the dungeon, Yain had told Cona that he doesn't want anyone to know about this ability. She asks why he's hiding this skill, so Yain asks if she's not curious why a Coblod Lord was here to endanger students. Yain reveals to her that it's because of Yain. He tells her he's a piece of shit that uses students as tools, and that he's very different from the side of himself he shows to the public and media, and he also thinks it's fine for useless students to die. Cona realizes that's why Yain's against him and hiding his ability. She then reminds Yain about what he had told her at Yain's office the other day, about not trusting anyone, including the chief. She asks him how much he knows, as he knew from the beginning that Yain was a bad person. She also says that Yain acts like he knows what's going to happen. She pleads with Yain to tell her how he knows these things. Yain thinks that her life would be at risk if she got any more involved. He wonders if he should use brainwashing, but then remembers that she has a high magic aptitude value. Her mentality is so strong, it might not work, and it's not a good solution in the first place. So instead, he apologizes to her and says if he said anything more, it would be dangerous for her. Back outside, the instructor apologizes profusely for not being able to rescue him. Yain says it's fine and walks away. Cona catches up to him again and asks if he could really not tell her in case something else like this happened. He says sorry and tells her that he believes she would keep the promise they made. The system informs Yain that he has completed the quest by taking a different route from the past. As a reward, he receives Eden's golden apple. Yeon tells Kim Seok that he is disappointed in him. He says he hates having a useless subordinate. The instructor says he won't disappoint him again, and Yeon asks him to make sure to tame Yeon in the next event before his patience runs out. After taking a shower, Yeon reminisces all that had happened that day. Before his regression, Yoojung died and Hoyeon didn't even reach half of his potential. For the sake of the future, Yeon decides that he must intervene. But not for Seo and A. She would do fine without his intervention. Yeon vows to be careful about how he interacts with her from now. He then turns on the news and thinks to find the relationship between Yeon and the Aesir. Yeon knows there would be many dangerous situations in the future, so he'd have to get stronger so he could respond to any situation. He watches the presenters talking on the television. One man asks another what other kind of dungeons are there. He replies that there are theme dungeons. These would have to be approached differently than regular dungeons. He continues to say that the biggest difference between normal dungeons and these are, you can't leave theme dungeons without clearing it. Yeon remembers that these dungeons were a thing. The man says that raiders who wanted to raid theme dungeons would have to become a character of the theme and clear certain requirements. It was kind of a roleplay, and what raiders want in these dungeons are rare item rewards. An item raiders called God's Arrangement. This item is the reason raiders are desperate to clear dungeons despite their difficulty. Yeon sees this as an opportunity to get what he needs most. Yoojung and Seoin are chatting over a cup of coffee. Ina apologizes to Yoojung for worrying her. Yoojung tells her it's fine and she's glad that she and Yeon are okay. Then she says she was worried Yeon might have been mean to her as his personality is shitty. Seoin pauses without replying and Yoojung freaks out and asks if he was actually mean to her. She tells her it's not that. She also says that Yeon seems to trust Yoojung a lot. In her mind, Ina just wishes he would trust her more. She tells Yoojung that maybe if he was stronger he would trust her. Yoojung immediately gets up and tells her they should throw out Yeon and go eat something yummy instead. Grabbing Ina's arm, she says she would make her feel better. In his room, Yeon holds Eden's golden apple he got as a reward. The system says it prevents aging and betters natural healing. As it's rare, Yeon thinks that it might cost at least millions. A rank theme dungeon is about to open in a theme park in Seoul. That's where Yeon could obtain Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps, shoes that can increase speed. These were the shoes that Thor's servant, Th Jalfi, wore. It would help to increase dexterity stat, so a lot of martial art raiders wanted them. This would help balance out Yeon's mana and endurance with dexterity. Yeon then takes a bite of the apple. It tastes like any other apple to him. The golden apple starts to take effect. Yeon's stamina, mana, natural healing ability, and magic aptitude increase while aging decreases. Yeon goes to the theme park. To him, seeing the place after his regression seems even more tacky. The girl at the ticket counter asks him what kind of ticket he would like. He slides an ID towards her and tells her he's Min Yeon, a raider from the Lotus Guild. And in a bit, a theme dungeon would open up here. Instructor Kim Ji-young goes up to a desk and asks if Yeon is out right now. The receptionist asks her if there's an issue. The teacher denies it while thinking how he's already recovered from such an incident while being a new student. In her mind, she praises Yeon by thinking he has guts. She then tells the woman to ask Yeon to come see her when he's back and leaves. Kim Ji-young receives a call from team manager Song Jae-sok. She asks him how the investigation went and he replies that after looking into it, he found out that Yeon was behind it. He then says that the person behind the mock dungeon trial was Kim Seok-gi and he must be in a difficult position now. He asks her to keep an eye on both of them and call him if she notices anything. Before she hangs up, she tells him that she thinks Min Yeon knows something. At the theme park, it is announced that it's an emergency situation. All the guests in the park are asked to leave. Yeon thinks that the Lotus Guild is influential as the evacuation of the people was fast. Earlier, Seung-yoon had told him that he could mention their guild, but on one condition, which would be to prioritize his safety if things become dangerous. She tells him no teacher wants their student to be in danger and anything can happen in a dungeon. Soon, the theme dungeon called Neverland in Ruins appears. A special reward would be given for clearing 3 missions consecutively. Yeon's quest is to find the 3 missions and clear them successfully. For this, he would be awarded Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps. To Yeon, this seems just like he remembers it from his past life. He reminisces a scenario that took place the last time he was here. He had met Seo Ah-hyeon, a theme dungeon raider. She'd told him about her skill called Cognition Accelerant. There's nothing she couldn't do if she used her brain a bit. She was a self-proclaimed genius with an IQ of 150. She was excited about her power and bragged about it but ended up being killed by those who were envious of her. And because of that, Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps went to someone else. As the dungeon is being set up, Yeon thinks that it would be better for him to take them instead. From the entrance, Yihan is transported to the Viking dungeon. Soon, Yihan is synchronized with the character. He's playing Jalfi, a warrior who survived the invasion of the Vikings. Yihan receives a quest which requires him to become Jalfi and rescue Roskva, his younger sister. Jalfi is the servant of the god of thunder, Thor. He's also the fastest in the 9 realms. Originally a human, he despised the Aesir because he'd lost his family to the Aesir. Yihan is taken by surprise as this isn't how the story goes. He understands that it must be another conflict between the Aesir and Nornir. Suddenly, someone screams out Jalfi, Yihan's character's name. He gets up thinking about how he stole a ship to find Roskva. Frederick, the man who gave him the idea to steal the ship, comes up to him and asks if he's okay. Yihan, who's playing as Jalfi, says he's okay, but all of a sudden, the ship starts to tilt and rock. A bunch of goons climb onto the ship. Yihan doesn't know what's happening, but he decides to hold off finding Roskva for a bit. He tells Frederick to deal with them and jumps onto the ship nearby. One of the pirates tells him that he just jumped into enemy territory when he should be hiding instead. Yihan then notices a girl tied up. He has no trouble recognizing her as Seo Ah-hyan. Yihan wonders what she's doing here, but he is informed that she is Roskva, Jalfi's younger sister. Seo Ah-hyan is a genius and a great raider to be. She considers herself to be an amazing person, but she ended up being locked here because she had gotten separated from her friends. 3 minutes before the emergency announcement, she'd told her friends she had to go to the bathroom. She thought that the chances of a dungeon appearing where she was 0.6%, but eventually she did end up being locked up and she curses her luck for it. She's upset and cries at first, but then decides to find a way out of this place. Hoping to see someone, she spots Yihan walking around. He doesn't seem to be a part of the raid team, so she decides to follow him. Sighing, Yihan realizes she got locked up here despite the announcement that was made. He's frustrated that it had to be her. The men aim for Yihan using their arrows. Using his powers, Yihan is able to keep the attacks at bay. Feeling optimistic, Yihan thinks that even though she's a bitch, she would be helpful for the raid. He wouldn't be able to send her out, so it's better to use her. Yihan punches one of the men and goes up to Rest, who watch in fear. He tells them to come at him all at once as he doesn't have time. After he has defeated them all, Yihan tells Roskva to stop pretending to sleep. She asks him if he's Jalfi. He then bends down and punches the wall next to her. He tells her he knows what she's thinking and warns her to not try any of her funny ideas. Yihan's first mission has been successfully completed, so they're both sent back to field. Yihan thinks that she's a magic class raider but moves like a martial arts raider. He then asks her what kind of skill she has. Lying to him, she says that her skill allows her to be better at swordsmanship. She hopes to trick him as there aren't many middle schoolers who have skills. She thinks about how she wants to use him to her advantage. Yihan is quick to say that he hates liars. She stammers while denying it. She lies again and says that it's called beginner swordsmanship revision. Yihan tells her it's cognition accelerant. He explains her own skill to her, saying that it makes it feel like time slowed down and quickens the user's thoughts. After saying this, he asks her if he's wrong. Feeling flustered, Seo Ah-hyan is unable to reply. Getting up, Yihan says he can't take her with him because she still plans to lie and use him. She immediately apologizes to him while sobbing. She begs him to not leave her behind here as she would die otherwise. Yihan asks her how he can trust her. She says she would figure out a way. So, Yihan asks her to write a contract instead. Soon, a contract is made. It states that Seo Ah-hyan can't act in any way that would harm Yihan. Seo Ah-hyan must obey Yihan's orders, and Yihan would ensure her safety until the dungeon is cleared. Yihan uses subordination, a brainwashing skill that would allow him to hold supremacy through contract. She agrees to sign the contract and cuffs and chains appear on her to signify subordination. The system states that the subordination would not be broken even after the quest is cleared. At Hel's temple, Hel is told that the great enemy seems to be working hard. The glares of the Aesir gods have gotten sharp, and if she left now, they'd be upset. So Hel has been asked to be their eyes as they'd need some time to stall before Yihan is ready. Yihan and Seo Ah-hyan head to the haunted house. She freaks out upon hearing the name. Yihan asks her if she's scared. She tries to laugh it off and says what kind of middle schooler would be afraid of that. Yihan says someone like her would be. Seo Ah-hyan is dumbfounded and Yihan tells her to prepare to go in. But she stops him and says she needs to do some deep breathing. The second mission takes place. Seo Ah-hyan's character is a cameraman and Yihan is a horror streamer. Suddenly, a giant man says it's been a while since they had guests. He introduces himself as Alfred, the butler of the mansion who serves Countess Flandier. He had come to greet them as the Countess instructed him to. Yihan's quest is to use the camera to reveal truths about the mansion and escape. Alfred invites them both in by saying that the Countess emphasized that he must serve them well. He takes them both to the dining room to eat. Yihyun notices a vase of flowers while Seo Ah-hyun admires a painting of a young girl and a dog and calls it beautiful. Alfred lets them know it's the portrait of the owner and Sean. The girl in the painting seems to be 12, so Yihyun says that the owner must really cherish her childhood to put up painting like this. Alfred's voice and personality suddenly turns dark and he says that the Countess has a lot of very happy dreamlike memories. He then asks them both to follow him. Yihyun thinks he should be more alert. For the first mission, the system had told him the context, but not for this one. He has to figure out the secrets himself. He turns towards Seo Ah-hyun to see her frightened. He tells her she was lying when she said she wasn't scared. To this, she replies that it's only because she hasn't gotten used to this place yet. When they reach the dining room, Alfred says the Countess prepared a feast for them and asks them to dig in. Saying that he would come back when they're done, Alfred leaves. Seo Ah-hyun says it would be a bad idea to eat those. Yihyun tells her they should explore as Alfred isn't here. But Seo Ah-hyun says they should get some information from here before they leave. She activates cognition accelerant skill and studies the dining room. When she's done, she says she discovered a few things about the mansion. When asked what it is, she says the owner of the mansion is a 12-year-old kid. Yihyun asks why she thinks so and she mentions the chair. Pulling it out, she shows him how the seat of the owner is higher than others. She also talks about the shelves in the lobby. They were all pretty low and only the lower handles were used. Yihyun agrees with her and they plan to go to another room only to realize they've been locked inside the dining room. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, a news reporter says that a raider from the Lotus Guild and a middle schooler are in the theme dungeon and everyone is concerned if they will make it out okay. Two men from the raider team discuss that they should go and check up on whoever is inside as 2 hours have passed since they went to the dungeon. One of them checks his clipboard and sees that it's Min Yihyun. He remembers him from the goblin incident and lets his colleague know that the dungeon will be cleared. Seo Ah-hyun is terrified and says that if they're trapped here, they'd never make it out. Yihyun tells her to calm down and says there has to be a way out as this is a dungeon. Hearing this, she feels relieved and says there's no inescapable dungeon, and she goes away to look around the room some more. Yihyun thinks there's no way he could open this door with the stats he has. But Seo Ah-hyun escaped this place before Yihyun's regression, so he assumes that the required stamina for successfully raiding this dungeon is low, which means another variable must be involved. Seo Ah-hyun calls Yihyun and says there's something wrong with the camera. When he looks into the camera, he sees Alfred lying dead on the floor with his neck slashed, so they realize that the Alfred who guided them here earlier was fake. Yihyun is notified that they've reached 70% of Alfred's secret, the first mystery of the mansion. Yihyun thinks this is just the beginning. He tells her the camera shows them what they can't see. Seo Ah-hyun says that's why she's the cameraman. The camera is the key to solving the mystery. Yihyun tells her she's pretty good. Yihyun had been wondering how she made it out of the dungeon since she's so scared. He realizes that she calms down when she's thinking. Yihyun then tells her that assuming that the Alfred they saw was fake, the camera is either showing them the past or present. Seo Ah-hyun says this is a dungeon where they're supposed to solve the mystery of the mansion, so they wouldn't show them the future, so it must be the past. They also understand that the food isn't meant to be eaten. Suddenly, Seo Ah-hyun says she doesn't feel good. Yihyun had been sensing a bit of mana. It's because all this is an illusion, a magic that occasionally appears in dungeon traps. So he activates absolute calculation skill, but the activation fails as the skill is not allowed here. Meanwhile, Seo Ah-hyun is trying to look around for a device for opening a door. She says how the only thing different in the camera is Alfred being at the top of the table in the place of the food. So the key to escaping might be there. Yihyun turns on an on-off skill called mana detection. Using that, he senses mana from the pudding. Blocking magic is fundamentally tied to other objects or calculations. So, in order to destroy the magic, you need to either destroy the object or erase the calculation. Yihyun tells Seo Ah-hyun that the key is in the pudding. She goes up to the pudding and takes the key out of it. Hence, they've successfully completed the second quest. Alfred watches them through a crystal ball and says that the guests did not enjoy the meal. He says that he can't be lacking on treating guests well and says Alfred will never disappoint the Countess. Yihyun and Seo Ah-hyun make it out of the dining room and reach the guest bedroom. Seo Ah-hyun looks through the camera for clues. Yihyun tells her they should go into the room. Seo Ah-hyun is terrified, but Yihyun tells her they have to get out of here unless she wants to stay in this mansion forever. She agrees, without a choice. He tells her to look around and call for him if she sees anything. So they split up and Yihyun is looking for clues when out of the corner of his eyes, he sees a ghost of a girl. She walks towards him while pointing to Alfred who is behind him. Yihyun and Seo Ah-hyun end up being locked up in a prison. Using cognition accelerant, she tries to figure out where they are. Judging by the moss and moisture, she says it seems like they're in an underground jail, and there are traces of torture throughout the place. Yihyun assumes there'd be a key somewhere here too. He activates a skill called Silence and proceeds to punch the entrance of the jail, causing it to break without any noise. He tells her to be quiet as it'd be bad if Alfred or anyone else found them. Just then, they hear a barking noise. A puppy jumps at Yihan, who catches it. In its mouth, it holds a key. Seo Ah-hyun orders him to put the puppy down. Yihan tells her it appears normal in both appearance and mana, and seeing the key in its mouth, he assumes it must have been trapped here too. Seo Ah-hyun tries to reason that the puppy could be a trap as they wouldn't give them the key so easily. The puppy grunts and looks at her angrily. Yihan receives a new sub-quest. His task is to go to the 4th floor and take Flandier's diary. Along with the puppy, Yihan and Seo Ah-hyun make it to the 3rd floor. She says they'd have to just look around because they don't have their camera. Yihan does not reply and stays quiet. Seo Ah-hyun says he's making her anxious. She turns around to where he's looking and sees a ghost walking towards them. Seo Ah-hyun tells Yihan that they don't have time to talk to ghosts and tries to pull him away, but Yihan asks the ghost why she's still here and if she has any regrets related to the mansion. She shakes her head, so Yihan asks if she's here to help them instead, and she nods. So Yihan asks her to tell them where Flandier's room is. She points towards the room. Yihan thanks her and says that he would help her move to the afterlife if he had the chance. Outside the dungeon, Sungyi is talking to a man from the raider team. He'd told him that the Lotus Guild would take responsibility for everything related to this theme dungeon. In return, Sungyi asks for the Raider Association to not release any information about Yihan on Seung-yoon's request. The man says it's hard to understand why the Lotus Guild would go to such lengths for a Millie's Academy student. Sungyi tells he cannot reveal the reasons. The man then says that he has nothing to lose from this offer, so he'd do as he said. In the dungeon, Yihan and Seo Ah-hyun enter Flandier's room after Yihan has managed to defeat living armors, which are C-rank monsters. As soon as they enter the room, Yihan picks up a book from the desk. He reads what Flandier has written on it. She's written that her parents went to the city to buy a doll for her, but then she'd received a letter that they were killed by thieves. She felt lonely until a girl was caught stealing flowers from their garden. She was about her age and looked like her doll, so she took a liking to her and asked her to live with her in the mansion. She had no name, so Flandier named her Sally. Flandier is happy to have a friend. Soon, Alfred leaves the mansion without a word, and Sally had told her that he must have gone to the next town in a hurry. A few days later, Flandier has mentioned in her diary that Alfred was back, but he seemed different and Sally seems to be hiding something too. Then she writes that Alfred and Sally are knocking on her door and she's sure that they want to kill her. After reading it, Yihan closes the diary and the restrictions come undone. The restrictions on skill use are no longer in effect. Yihan realizes Flandier had been murdered. It was probably the doing of the monster that had stolen the mansion. It was probably a doppelganger. Yihan has discovered Alfred's secret and completed the sub-quest. The system says that the quests have been finished and he needs to safely escape the mansion now. Trying to escape from the mansion, Yihan faces the monster behind it all. He tells the monster that it was finally showing its real self after acting fake. The beast tells him he's quick to catch on for a human. Yihan tells it that he's just smart and that it wasn't even difficult. He then says that maybe it's him that's stupid. The beast gets angry for being insulted, and before it can do any damage to Yihan, he uses his skills and power to defend himself. The doppelganger is a B-rank beast. It's dangerous because it can copy others' skills and appearance, but when considering its combat skills, it's a C-rank monster. It tells Yihan that it's gonna consume him, but Yihan's lightning chain skill binds the beast and prevents it from doing so. Yihan asks how it feels to be played after playing others for a long time. As the beast deteriorates, it thinks it wants to be human too before exploding. After this, Yihan sees Flandier waving goodbye to him, and along with the puppy, he leaves the mansion. The system informs him that he's cleared all the missions and that he'd soon be transported to the real world. He ends up on a bench next to Seo Ah-hyun. She tells him he should have said something if he knew the puppy was her. Yihan tells her to be glad that she made it out alive, and instead of whining, they should head to the next destination. She says that should take a break instead. Yihan retorts by saying that she didn't do anything ever since they were in that underground jail. Seo Ah-hyun says she has mental fatigue. Yihan tells her it'll go away if she moves around. Through subordination, he orders her to walk. Left with no choice, she walks around until they reach a parade. Bruin, the host of the show, welcomes them. He congratulates them both for completing 2 missions. Yihan directly asks him what the last mission is like. Bruin says the last mission is tag. He points to a gate behind him and says they both would have to run from beasts that come out of it and reach the final destination. Yihan says that can't be all there is to it. Bruin says he's clever. He says that in this game of tag, beasts would appear depending on the number of challengers and how strong they are. Yihan thinks this is bad as there'd be stronger beasts than earlier, considering his skills, and he'd also have to fight while protecting Seo Ah-hyun. Bruin says he needs to get an understanding for their skills. A few moments later, he congratulates them and says S rank. While he's busy being impressed over how he's never met anyone with such high ranks, Yihyun is shocked and asks how it makes sense. Bruin wishes them luck and Yihyun receives the final quest, which is to run away from Surtur to the final destination or defeat him. The rewards for this would be Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps. Yihyun notices that 3 members have been mentioned and thinks something's wrong. Surtur is a being whose purpose is to engulf the whole world in flames. The sword of flames in his hand is said to be hot enough to burn the world to ashes in a matter of a few hours. Yihyun and Seo Ah-hyun look up at Surtur in disbelief. Frightened, she asks how they're supposed to run away from it. He tells her he's thinking, but for now, she'd have to shut up and run if she didn't want to die. A black cat watches this scenario and thinks that this may be its fault, so it should try to help them. Hel tells the cat that it's cruel and that it has no intention of helping them. She asks the cat to leave them be, as she wants to see how Yihyun makes it out of this one. Surtur approaches them and Yihyun thinks it's wiser to avoid fighting with him directly and to just find the goal. Seo Ah-hyun spots an arrow with the word goal written on it. She tells him that's the destination, but Yihyun asks her to hold on for a bit and activates Haste's skill. Grabbing her hand, he dashes away from Surtur. Yihyun decides that he would distract Surtur and use Seo Ah-hyun to get to the goal. Surtur asks which fool has summoned him while hot flames engulf around him. Yihyun tells Seo Ah-hyun that they should split up and she should run to the merry-go-round while he would stay and distract Surtur. He calls to Surtur and before Surtur's flames land on him, Yihyun shoots up to the top of a tower. Yihyun asks Surtur how he'd catch him when he's so slow. Seo Ah-hyun has almost reached the destination, but Surtur destroys it with burning flames. Yihyun and Seo Ah-hyun watch in shock as the system alerts that the goal has been destroyed and that the quest's condition has been changed to impossible. Surtur calls Yihyun an ignorant fool for thinking that he was a match for him. So, Yihyun decides that he would kill him. Surtur hurls another fireball at him, but Yihyun blocks it. Surtur is now impressed and says only a few have been able to block his attack. So he tells Yihyun to try blocking this too and flings his sword of flames. Seo Ah-hyun watches from a distance and thinks that she has to do something too. She calls Yihyun and tells him she has an idea to beat Surtur. He runs to her while she guides him what direction to run so Surtur's attacks don't hit him. When they reach a safe place to talk, she tells him there's a water tank outside Neverland. If they could lure Surtur there, they could damage Surtur by using water to get rid of the flames. She says she would use her skills to predict Surtur's route and tell Yihyun and then lure Surtur to the tank. Yihyun stops in front of Surtur, who calls him a weak human and asks if he's tired of running. Yihyun takes a jibe at him by saying that he's nothing compared to the Aesir gods, and says that in fact, Surtur's just a gate guard now. Yihyun says he's in no position to call him weak. Surtur is speechless and Yihyun asks again if he's afraid of a human too. This angers Surtur beyond belief. Yihyun activates illusion skill and the water from the tanks put off the flames of Surtur. Yihyun uses this opportunity to jump close to him and stab him with his sword. Surtur calls it a dirty trick. Yihyun is unfazed and says he won anyway. Surtur then tells him that Yihyun may have fought his copy, but going against his original self wouldn't be easy. He disappears after being defeated and the system informs Yihyun that he's cleared the last mission. Seo Ah-hyun watches, feeling glad that it's over. The cat, still watching, says that they didn't need its help after all, and notes that Yihyun is an interesting boy. It says that he looks anxious to become stronger and asks Hel if she thinks so too. Hel says that he's nothing more than a vessel. The cat then says that Hel is the one who's most curious about how Yihyun's doing. The cat decides that the Aesir should not know about the existence of the great enemy yet. Even if the war is destined to happen, it's too early now. Odin is the highest being of the Aesir, whom the great enemy must kill, so he must become stronger. Yihyun receives the reward he came here for, Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps. He is in awe of how amazing it is. An S-rank item is as powerful as it is rare. He notices Seo Ah-hyun with a strange look on her face. Realizing that she's trying to pull something again, he uses subordination. She immediately talks about the skill she received as a reward called Roskva's Seal. She mentions how it increases strength and gives courage. He thinks that rather than this, Cognition Accelerant would be more useful, but he'd wait for now as he could call her whenever he wanted. Then, Bruin shows up and wishes Yihyun a safe journey while addressing him as the fated great enemy. Yihyun is taken aback and asks him to wait, but Bruin takes his leave. Outside the dungeon, a huge crowd has gathered and the moment they step out, there's chaos. A man comes forward to talk to Yihyun, but he's gone. Everyone is astonished as Yihyun was there a moment ago, so they rush to get an interview with Seo Ah-hyun. A man from the Raider Association asks another if Yihyun hid himself, as it's possible if he's a martial arts class. The other man informs him that Yihyun is actually magician class and tells him that he's a battle mage. Seung-yoon is on the phone with Sung-yi. After hanging up, she thinks that Yihyun is not an ordinary kid because he vanished after accomplishing such a feat. She knows he wouldn't tell her anything unless she asks, so she decides to meet him sometime. After going back home, Yihyun looks online and is glad to see that there's no articles about him. All the articles mention that an unknown person escaped from the theme dungeon. He knows that the Lotus Guild must have done something about it. When he exited the dungeon, he didn't expect so many people to be there, but at least he got to run out of there using Jalfi's Thunder Steps. Just by equipping them, his running speed gets 4 times faster, and he was able to get out of there without anyone noticing. Yihan wonders how fast they would be when he gets used to them. Yihan had also received a single-use item called Surtur's Flames. When used, it would reinforce a weapon to its strength capacity limit and imbue it with a flame attribute. With this incident, Yihan realized that he's still weak. He wants to be strong enough to win against any opponent without using dirty tricks and strong enough to one-sidedly defeat the opponent. He wishes to be someone others don't dare to approach out of fear. He wants to leave behind his weak past and protect his family and friends. He decides to become stronger no matter what, starting now. Yan is talking to instructor Jiang Isu and says that he would leave it all to her. She says she won't disappoint him and that she would report on every single detail about Yihan. Yan thinks how one must get rid of weeds to have a beautiful garden. He's really excited about this event as he would be able to get rid of all the dirty things in his way. So that is it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you like the video, then hit that like button and leave a comment for the next part. Most important, subscribe and press the bell icon for notification. I will meet you in the new video. Till then, bye.